they're not in the suit. It's really people not understanding the politics. And again, you know, like when they came and picked me up today, Sister Sandra was making mention, you know, that she was listening to the radio show yesterday. She said, "Oh, it was good." And I said, "Oh, all right." I mean, I was just doing what I do. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? While appreciating what she's saying, but it's what I do. I wasn't impressed with me, just put it that way.
Right.
If you understand what I'm saying. But what it also made me recognize with the calls that came in yesterday, some of the responses, even from people who are allegedly conscious, that consciousness comes in degrees.
Absolutely.
And and because understanding and comprehending the times, meaning that what we're really dealing with, we know that people, us as a people, have been geared for so many generations to identify ourselves by our beliefs, by what we think is religion, even the fact that they don't even know they don't have religion. It's even that. Whereas you'll quickly hear people talking about their religions, you'll quickly hear people loosely talking about God, talking about money, and 90% on a test, each one of them 99% of the time would fail and wouldn't think they were failing. And they're not that they're insincere. They really don't know they're in the soup. And there's a tendency for them to think, "Oh, wow, that's interesting." Still not recognizing they're in it.
Because there's a semblance of freedom in the soup. There's a semblance of not being as heated in your portion.
There's a semblance of blindness
That's what I
in
mean.
the soup.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Now, this is what I'm saying. And this is in even relationship, even how you teach and how you're instructing people, bringing them into an awakening. The awakening is bringing them to an awareness of what already is, whereas they think that when they become awake to what you present, that they've arrived, they was in it all the time. They were just easy food. It is not unlike ostriches that are being chased by a carnivorous beast, and rather than learn the paths of escape, they find a hole in the ground, stick their head in it, and then, you know, they start feeling the breeze and figuring everything passed, and they ain't got no feathers on their butt. And one cheek left, right? And it's sort of where our people are. You know, just like, for instance, you can discuss things with our people, and they'll start talking money seriously, and they're not allowed to handle money. And they don't even know that they're not allowed to handle money. You understand? It's fine, good brother.
Hey, what's that? How you doing?
All right.
All right.
You understand? Go ahead, sign in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And yet, when you discuss it, it could be interesting to them.
Right.
And they'll listen. But you understand? And then turn around, and when the representatives, putting things in context, right? When the representatives for the Jesuits send them an instrument in the mail telling them they got to pay income tax, they do it swiftly and easily, not even knowing they're paying the Jesuits. They think they're paying the children's school tax and tax from the government, that they're not really even a part of. I mean, and so we're not talking essentially dumb people. We're talking about average people that are fairly intelligent, that are just going about their lives and think this stuff has nothing to do with them.
No.
Okay, thank you.
And they've been living this myth all their lives. And they're suffering in their miseries. And the fact that they've been, you know, just like, for instance, I'll get more into it to after I get this stuff off of here. I'm talking big trash, right? Can't even erase.
You can't erase nothing.
Oh, you saw why that stuff is still
You can't erase nothing.
See, I got some new glasses. I know they are. I just got these from Philly.
Oh, All right, I like that.
People with style.
Yeah.
Got these when I, remember we were at the
Yeah.
Locks conference?
Uh-huh.
Your brother was selling them?
Uh-huh.
They just came finally today. Yeah.
Yeah.
Saturday? Was we there?
Yeah, that was
Saturday?
Saturday.
That was that. Yeah, we were both
Yeah, the
there.
Saturday before.
Yeah, we were there, and it was a brother out there who was selling. He has he and his wife. She's an optometrist, I guess, and he's
Yeah.
optician, and it's called People with Style,
Mm-hmm.
and so he had one of a kind frames,
Mm-hmm.
and like
And
he was able to. I sent him my prescription,
Uh-huh.
and I got.
They hooked you up.
Yeah, I wanted the big look.
Wasn't that cool?
Yeah. And these probably would have cost me $500 or $600.
Yeah, easily.
$195 with Verilux. I got my vision goes all the way across instead of just in the middle.
Yeah.
So
So that's cool.
So
And
that's
then
right
they
in your hometown.
And
People
then
with
they
style.
don't
Where was it located?
I'll give. He's on like Allegheny. I can give you his number.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
You know, and the reason I said that,
We need to get something to get that off.
Yeah.
I had alcohol. I took my alcohol home. I had to rub with it.
yeah, alcohol with us, all right? And leave it next time. Yeah.
Let me
Bring a couple of bottles.
okay.
Yeah, but start it anyway, so because we want to share
I'm gonna
this
start the
and
tape.
have everybody benefit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, you got your mic?
Yes. I'm going to bring my mic in. Does yours have the plug-in for the corded mic for the cordless?
I mean, I could. I guess I could.
Because I have one, I'll bring mine. That way we can keep this with the audience, and
I
then
got another one for the audience.
then I can just
I got 5 of
pin
them
it
for the
on my
audience.
collar.
You just don't want to hold that.
Yeah,
because it kind of
Oh,
keeps
shit.
us.
Woo. I thought I had lost my
Testing,
reversioner.
testing.
Okay, ready?
Yeah,
I'm ready
yes.
to tape.
Salam, you all.
It's not.
Welcome to where are we at, you all?
Real
Houston.
awakening minds.
House of Reawakening Minds.
All right.
All right.
Hosted by who?
Dr. Naila. Not Dr.
Oh, right.
Naila.
I think she's an undercover writer.
That's the
Really.
cover writer.
But anyway, let's talk a little bit about perceptions. Perceptions and assumptions, and the dangers of perceptions and assumptions absent of knowledge. All right? That's deliberate. Now, on our way down here, Sister Sandra had made a few comments, and what it did, it made me aware, cognitively aware,
This replaces the.
cover page, yeah. Cognitively aware of
This replaces.
stuff that we do anyway. But what I recognize is there's an assumption that people have that what we're talking about is not spiritual. That's only because their concept about what is spiritual is also incorrect. You know, and there's a connection. You know, just like, for instance, you can say talk from the Quran, the Bible, WASPI, the Pentateuch, Hexateuch, and start talking about the works of the Romans and their injuries that's caused against the children of Israel, you know, things like that. And people immediately start talking about that spiritual. Well, what we're talking about is the workings of Rome against the people of Israel who don't know who they are. We're just not using the same phrases because the phrases have been deceptive, if you understand. And so, by these people not being aware, they must know the distinction between who they actually are and who they so-called are. For instance, one of the interesting things, and that's interesting again because the sister I was talking with today, actually earlier this morning, the comments was along the line because she was raised as a Jew, and she's saying raised as a Jew. Now she was saying that with the conception from her mind that she's black. That's her perception. but raised as a Jew, and she was a nurse, she's retired, and she was, her main clients were so-called Jews, European Jews. Now, of course, I kind of understood her conversation was coming from an assumptive perspective, a well-entrenched and well-taught presumptive perspective. And logically, her conversation came from a sense of assurance that she knew what she was talking about. You know, from a scholarly position, I knew what she was intending to say, but I also knew that she was heavily flawed, if you understand. Number one, because there ain't no Jew, because there's no J and E Jew, if you understand. And then her concept also was a disconnect from the land here. Wondering why, because one of the statements that she made to me, because we talked for actually quite a while, to be honest with you, so I'm not going to repeat everything, but the nature of it was the European, and I'm qualifying that, the European woman who was one of her clients pulled her arm one day and asked her a question, says that, can I ask you a question? This is, that she relayed to me. Can I ask you a question and that you wouldn't, hope you not offended, right? And she said, well, yes, you know. And the woman asked her, said, what's wrong with you people? You know, and she kind of was, her reflection was one of a little bit confusion, you know, like, why she asked me that? You know, my people, you know, then and she paused, she didn't know how to answer it necessarily. And, but it made her curious. But because she brought it up, that actually sparked our conversation. And one of the first things I talked about is how she's making reference to her people from a third-party perspective, which is indicative of what the problem is, and also us not necessarily recognizing that there's a problem. Because also in the midst of her conversation, she was mentioning about what's wrong with our youth. You know, those typical statements. You hear some of the elders always make those kind of statements, you know, like the youth, like without saying it, they're acknowledging the bridge that's between us and the youth. And so I responded to her and said, we cannot talk from a third-party perspective and as if they're starting from where they are and that they created this corruption that they're suffering from. That's an indicator that we have not laid anything sound and solid for them to build on. What we should be talking about is what's wrong with us. That caused us to mess up our youth. That's how we need to look at this. You know, because everything that's in the garden is a reflection of the seed of his mother, or the generation that come before them. And what's wrong with them is what we have done and have not done in a combination. Now, I'll see you.
When you talk about putting some elbow grease in it.
What is it? Work that. Anyway, so on the way down, Sister Sandra started making some remarks about the radio station, some of the questions that came about, and that's got me to thinking. And so I asked her, I said, well, when we get to class, you ask them so we can share it with everyone else, you know. But on top of it, and because, you know, I'm always moving around, a lot of things I don't have time to do. Although when I get in, I'm usually on the computer or something like that. I still don't have the time to do what I need to do. Because I have a lot of literature that's unpublished that needs editorial. And I do it when I can, and you know, before you know it, a month passed. Then you're into the next year, even though you've done a lot of work. But in dealing with the people, I'm recognizing these missing keys. And this is why I'm saying what I'm saying to Dr. Naila. And it's back to the redundancy of certain concepts. And then when I gave you the cover page to, which is corrected to the reversioner, you know, I know that more needs to be with it, but it would have to be put in a book. You know, you have to expand. And so what I did, and so keep in mind, what had occurred is that Paul Savage, had given me the reversioner statement, that statement that you see at the top, and actually what you see, the second paragraph, where it says, for example, down the bottom where it says, for example, that's what he gave me. I built the rest of it.
Okay.
Having a comprehension of what it is, I built the rest of it. However, as I built the rest of it, logically, because I did it in actually 2 days, and then I had to make some corrections, and because he was doing it on the radio station, or make reference from it. And then I looked at it again, I made some more corrections, then certain questions come up, and then I just filled in, from conversing about it, and said, well, I may as well put it on the paper, which I was trying not to do, so it get turned from actually one page, a half a page, with the paragraph and the statement, to 13 pages, then to 18, then to 20, and then I had to go back and do some spells. And then I also recognized that's still not enough, because it's structured with the predication that the reader already has a knowledge of law and history. Do you understand? And even then talking about it some more and looking at the questions that it generates, I'm recognizing that perceptions, misleading perceptions. And so like if you just openly talk about Rome, what Rome did to Jesus, and what Rome's in relationship, like if you look at the Bible, Quran, I'm feeling good, brother. If you're looking at, say, the Bible, the Quran, and particularly the Bible, the way people are taught the book, and you start talking about Rome and Rome's battle and the Pharisees, Sadducees, and the battle that Jesus had with them, people immediately start thinking that's spiritual. That's political. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And if you come with this information, they think this information is not spiritual. When this is telling the same story, except on a more realistic basis. Do you understand? And on a basis whereas it leads you to a consciousness of some remedy, much of which is predicated by your actions and your sincerity. But you're dealing with them same Romans, with the same exact problems, which is the foundation of the problems of the world. The interesting thing is that when you talk to many people, you recognize that they don't recognize that. They think you're on a different subject matter. You're on a whole different venue that ain't got nothing to do with Jesusness and them Romans. And it's the exact scenario, but for real. When they look at it in the book, they don't see themselves. This information is designed to give you a mirror, because we have a tendency to think that because we got new bodies that we're different people, and because it's a new time that we're far removed, when actually we are the seed of the prophecy that we read. And what has happened is that people don't recognize that, even when the evidence is clear as day. You can even give them scenarios, and they still don't see themselves. And the fact that they don't see themselves gives Rome power. Their power is predicated on our blindness or our lack of knowledge. They're depending on it. This is why it's necessary for certain political activities to take place with the 501c3 agreement with Skull and Bones, as an example. The tithing principle set up by Pope Sylvester II, and then charging it to Moses and Jesus, and then the people believe them. The lie that they told the people that Jesus was a Christian, while they know he was Yahudi, or what you would call Jew, which is not Jew, it's Yahudi, where they paint him as a European, knowing that he was Moabite. And so our people have been under the illusion that they've been, quote unquote, spiritual. They have not been spiritual. They don't even know what spirituality is. And that's not a condemnation. It's just an explanation of truth. You know, and the interesting thing is, while the PhDs and those in the hierarchy of the priesthood across the board, so don't get caught up in, you know, Islam, Brahmanism, Judaism, Taoism, you know, Buddhism, that's the Brahmic.
Okay.
Although we're saying it's still the Brahmic priest. Yeah. So people's perceptions of what is really is not what the masses have been subjugated to. They've been given dogmata for generations, and they have called it religion. It's not a condemnation, it's the truth. It's difficult for them to accept that they've been played. And it's for everybody, you know, even those who find these things out. One of the most difficult things to do is for people to continue to ask for the truth, and then when the truth comes, they run.
Yeah.
Or they don't recognize it. Or they think it, you know, it's an interesting thing. They have the idea that they're religious and they're going to another religion type thing. When it's sort of like they've been given counterfeit fiat, and they still don't know that it's no different than monopoly. I mean, for real, we're not talking about imagine, we're not talking about opinion, we're talking about in fact. And they also don't know, as soon as they admit or say that they have money, it makes them taxable. Simply because they don't know law. Meanwhile, they're telling you about Allah and Prophet Muhammad and Jesus and God, and when God's going to kick the devil's butt on Thursday according to the Mayan calendar, sell your bicycle and all these kind of things, and the calculating of the calendars, and therefore we know the Lord when the Lord's going to, we don't even know ourselves. You know, and of course, people get sensitive when you're dealing with blunt truths because they still under the assumption that they're spiritual. When all the high priests know that spirituality is breath, spirit is breath, spirituality is the art or the training of breathing techniques to actually purge yourselves. Just like when you baptize, just like say when you baptize symbolically with water, or like when they do what they call ablution in Islam, where they wash their arms and their feet, you know, before they make salat, make prayer, etc. And they're in the impression that they got it going on. When the truth of it is, those are symbolics, not that they're wrong. The true baptism is the rebirth with a new mind. I mean, flushing out the corrupted thoughts that have been set upon the world by Rome, and going back to the ancient principles of your ancient mothers and fathers to purge the corrupted character. The corrupted character. And it is the corrupted character upon which the vampire actually feeds. So by our people not knowing themselves, this manifests as food for the bloodsuckers. Now, of course, the bloodsucker represents the energy. See, because blood represents the life force. And when you're talking about blood sucking politically, it means exploitation. And so, as an example, when Yeshua was disputing with the doctors of the law, even at the age of 12, putting it in layman's terms, they were doctoring up the law. Not that they didn't know the law, they were doctoring up the law, and he was straightening them out. And they was a little pissed because he was only 12 years old, straightening them out, and they're the high priest. You know, and so he was a threat politically. Do you understand? At the same time, he's speaking on behalf of fundamental principles as well on behalf of his people who have not yet even recognized him, if you get the point. And so it is no different, absolutely no different than people understanding the politics that we are living today on the planet Earth is a result of the law not being carried out then. And so the people don't see themselves. People don't even know that prophecy is a post-dated check of human experience. You know, just like if somebody write a check for you and you can't cash it, if it's post-dated, you can't cash it today. They're doing it to give time to put something in the account. prophecy is an account of the chronology for humanity. So when prophecies are made, they are not lived at the time they're written. They're projections into the future. The key is, they're there to prepare people for when it comes, they have been warned of the storm. Meaning that they recognize it by the signs and the symbols that were already predestined. The problem that we have today is that our people have lost the knowledge of themselves, so they don't know they are the Yahudi. Because the Romans told them, Jew. They don't even know the difference. You know, when Rome talked about that when the time comes, that he got this thing is so covered that they wouldn't know day from night. And when it talks about in the Bible, when it says the blind lead the blind, they both go in the ditch together, well, in fact, that's really what's happening. Whereas people, when they read the book, they keep thinking 2,000 years ago. They're living it today. And it's back to the issue of they think they're not involved. They're involved. They are the food. It's almost like, you know, bowl of Rice Krispies. You ever see them cartoons when cereal talk?
Snap, crackle.
Yeah, that type of stuff, right? It's sort of like the Rice Krispies on this side of the bowl, and everybody digging the spoon on the other side of the bowl. Hey, I don't know about them. We saved. No, you're going to end up on the other side of the bowl too. I mean, you know.
We get to it.
And I'm saying that in a sense to say when people think that this has nothing to do with them, it's at the core, not only of, at their everyday politics, their everyday life. Just like people, many people say, we'll come to the House of Reawakening Minds a couple times and then get some information and think, oh, I know this, and think it doesn't involve them. And then when the rotisserie comes around and that chicken gets bit, then they run back in looking for some crash course information to look for remedy because what they thought it didn't apply to them. Even the people who, and it's not a condemnation, who think that they're spiritual and therefore think they don't need this information. It's only a matter of time till Rome comes after all of their estate. And all of their belief will not save them. You know, it's sort of like, it's the miscomprehension that people have that when they loosely say Allah, Jesus, Muhammad, God, the prophets, that represents salvation for them as individuals. Saying those words and names mean nothing. It is only the action, the work that is done by it. If there's no work applied, it is empty as a vessel or bucket that has intended for water but has nothing in it. But people have been trained by the priesthood that when they come to the mosque, church, synagogue, etc., that they fulfilled their duties. It's a deceptive position, unfortunately. And when the meat, or what you call the core, of why these lessons are given are brought to the surface, you can tell whether people have been properly taught because they would recognize them. But when you recognize that they do not recognize them, it's not offensive, you know, but you charge the priesthood because they have the keys, they've been given the keys, and the people have not been given the keys. And this is another reason why the symboliographers, like for instance, most people aren't aware that persons in positions of power are taught symbolography. All high priests are too. You know, and logically, if most people aren't aware of that, they're not even aware. No, that's my baby. They're not even aware that there's a flaw because they're under the impression that they can read. However, they can't. Excuse me just a minute. I'm gonna put this on silent. And this is again, sis, when we were talking on the radio yesterday, when we talked about the Etymology degree.
Yes.
Now, although that wasn't a subject matter, because of the questions that came up, it's interjected. You know, going with the flow. But as an example, do you know what etymology is?
Etymology is a stem from that.
All right,
Like the
now,
meaning of the
this is-
origin of the word.
All right, this is what I'm requesting from you. And with the question at all, I'm looking for the black markers. Just got the green ones? Say it again.
You don't know.
I guess they, that little basket right there is upside down, it looks like I can see it from here. Maybe they're in there.
Under the
In
table.
the back.
It's sort of,
Oh,
make it work here. This is a dry erase.
now, and this is very important, and so people wouldn't necessarily relate this in their concepts of spirituality because they're really not taught. So, you know, like when you really don't know how to count, you don't know when somebody's cheating you.
Right.
So if those who are trained in educating and education don't inform people about certain basic fundamentals, they never miss it because they don't recognize that it's missing. But it's actually a handicap. Now, etymology degree is given in the 3rd grade in a proper school. Although they begin actually in the 1st, when they begin to really clearly teach it, it's actually 3rd grade. So it's actually also represented as the 3rd degree. Right? 1, 2, 3. 3rd degree, or Trinity. And it can be given it can be given different designations, but a scholar would recognize it, where the average person who doesn't get it, they can put it in different flavors, just like you can tell somebody who knows, how much is 1 and 1 and 1? And you say 3. Oh, I'm gonna get you this time. How much is 2 and 1? And if you start looking to the left, we already know you don't understand the formula. If you answer the question with another question, even with tone, is it 3? We know you don't understand the formula. How much is, well, if you don't know how much 2 and 1 is, how much is 1 and 2? I really got you this time. And if you still pausing, they know you don't know the formula. And if you don't know the formula, you can be fooled and you don't have the basics down. What they've done with people who have been under what you call colonial operations, if they removed certain primal, and I'll make this clear to you, quote unquote, primal reference points. You can use that as a phrase. They remove, or distort. Primal, reference points. And the reference points will deal with chronology, history, and law, all go together. This is deliberately applied, not accidentally. It is applied cognitively, which means consciously. No different if Dr. Naila said, well, let's hook the place up before everybody comes in and get the vacuum cleaner. We're going to vacuum this floor with the consciousness that we want the floor clean. Not, oh, dang, I vacuumed the floor. Whew, didn't know it would get clean. No, you knew that when you vacuum the floor, your intention is for it to get clean. It's not accidental. And you didn't exercise that work without the cognate that it is to take the dust and the residue off the floor. Now, so, when you hear this phrase, it is totally related. Quote unquote, culture is in the language. When you hear that phrase, it is not just a wayward or circumstantial phrase. The reason why what they call secret societies or clubs, etc., are maintained is because there are certain primal degrees of knowledge that is given universally to people who have PhDs. That means doctors of philosophy. Persons who carry titles in organized bodies of social interchange are PhDs. All PhDs, to qualify for their title, supposed to produce literature that it can be critiqued. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Most people who go to the different schools of thought, etc., very often operate with the conception that the different schools have totally different concepts. It's not true. The same way math is taught in medicine and in biology and in engineering, so is fundamental truths that are universal in the world. Likewise, again, what the masses aren't aware, the same thing applies to religion. But they've been given what you call schismata, that is what is the military term for divide and conquer, versions that are designed to divide and conquer, and they're all given the idea that they have the supreme truth. And the masses have been governed that way for generations. It is the cause of much of the division amongst people, even their families, etc. But their concepts would be that one has more devil than the other, and that's why one doesn't understand type thing. And so they're always judging each other when really, for the most part, neither one of them know what the swell they're talking about. And they're all paying the bills. Do you understand what I'm saying? And the problems that are reflected in their communities and their personal lives, etc., continue because they have no solution. But they're also trained to think that beliefs constitutes knowledge and fact, and therefore they are under the guise or the belief that they've arrived. They don't need to grow anymore. You need the Lord, if not me, I got it. You know, that type of mentality. And families are falling apart. Children are dying younger and younger in the streets. They're subject to all kinds of abuses while lying to themselves and lying to their children how saved they are. And that's generally reflected in our community more than in anyone else's. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, when what we keep projecting doesn't work, we use what is called the trained response. And the trained response is blame it on the devil. Right? And then move on, and the problems continue. And as a matter of fact, next generation, they get worse. While we continue to claim that we're religious. And we do this religious stuff more than anyone else. And though intelligence would say, if you're doing this more than anyone else, and you're, as a group, is doing worse than anyone else, divine law should indicate to you that you need to relook at what you're doing. We have a tendency not to do that because we're in this, also trained in the dogmata to be self-righteous and thinking that our calling on the Lord is stronger than everybody else's, calleth on the Lordeth. And we got our peanut butter sandwiches, and we don't know about anybody else, you know, and we operate that way. And then we pass that dogmata down to the next generation, and the result is what you see in the community. The proof is what you see in the community. However, the people will even deny the evidence and stand on their beliefs without examination. Therefore, they become food for the vampires. Now, back to point. Etymology degree is the basis upon reading and the capacity to read. See, people think that reading is pronouncing words and being able to say them because they see them on paper phonetically. Remember we were little? Cat. See cat run. Dick and Jane, the little books. You know, that type of stuff. And then they'll get in a little bit of phonetics later on, and the people are under the impression that they're being taught to read, but they've been not given the etymology degree. And so what occurs is that their children, this is another reason why the Europeans had always maintained what you call segregated schools, because etymology principle is not taught in certain schools where people who are prepared for servitude send their children. They're babysitting institutions. And they're deliberately neutered, which means it's almost like giving them watered down milk, denatured wheat bread, white sugar instead of raw sugar, which is poison, white bread instead of wheat and grain bread, which slowly kills their health. And in their mind, they're eating well. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And now we're talking fact, we're not talking just mere scenario. Etymology degree is the principle by which you recognize that the etymon to a word is what atom is to building blocks, what a seed is to a tree. To any living plant, an etymon is the seed to a word, any word. Matters not what its language, what linguistic source. You see? And so if a person is not aware of this and you're raised up without being cognate of the very foundation of the discipline that you're dealing with, logically you become uncultured because culture is in the language. The capacity for you to extract the culture, cultivation, is your capacity to read. When you hear Europeans often say about our people, don't worry about them, their children will never compete, no matter how long they go to school. Why? Because they can't read, and the ones who can won't, because they're well trained. Now, of course, in our opinion, we got godness, so we don't need that. We got Disness. Disney and Woodamore, we don't need nothing else. You know, and that's the general concept our people operate with. Sincerely, but that's the training. And a lot of times our people don't even see themselves how absolutely flawed that is. Because we've been trained from childhood that if you are a believer, you're secure. Because God will take care of you. And all the things just dance around you because you're in the world, but you're not of the world type thing. Well, why are you in line paying tickets then? Why you got one foot on the curb and they getting ready to throw you out your house with all your salvation? And why is your baby's laying in the street bleeding down to the gutter and you want to pray and blame it on the devil? This European doing their rituals, shooting young men 70 times in the middle of the street and everybody looking, and then they march in next week. And then they do it again the next week. And nobody goes to jail. And y'all talking about salvation. You know, Our denial and our irresponsibility is very costly. So etymon is what a core of a word is, just like when you have say you have a nucleus in physics, right? Electron,
Proton.
yeah, and you call it the nucleus, right? Right, and that would be a nucleus, right? And then you, in language, and this is, say, the ABCs, right? Or the word, right? Right? That would be the etymon. The etymon would be the nucleus of the word. And I'm just showing you this as an example so that you can kind of get an idea how you're supposed to look at this. And just like this is the core of the atom. Right? This is the core of the etymon. You see? And so for you to be able to have the true essence, meaning just like if you can have a seed, sometimes you can give people certain seeds, like if you give somebody some pumpkin seeds with some salt on it or not with salt, a lot of people will recognize that's a pumpkin seed, if you understand. But if you find the seed like just in the field and give it to most people, they would have to pause unless they're close to nature, that they can know what the seed is. They won't know what it is until it's planted and then it sprouts out with the daughter leaves. Sometimes they can tell by the daughter leaves, or sometimes it has to get a little bit more growth before they can tell what it is. You understand? They can walk in the field, see multiple plants, and for the most part can't tell you what they are. Some of them are food, even though they will call them weeds. Some of them are used for cure, even though they would call them weeds. Some of them will be toxic, and they may not know better. So it is with the etymon, or you understanding how to read. So reading is not just pronouncing things. Reading is your capacity to actually comprehend the message. So you can take a word just like you do an egg and look at the egg with a shell, right? Say it's two things. If you're going to eat it or if you're waiting for it to hatch. The value is in the yolk and in the egg white, which acts as food for the yolk. You see? Because it contains the energy and the expression of its mother. You see? That is what an etymon is. Now you have what they would call connotation. This is why, like, you often hear people say, connotation, denotation. If you don't know that distinction, you also can't read. Because you will have the tendency that when people give you a word, they can give you multiple definitions. The real deal of it is, half of what they give you is not really definitions. They're connotations, which is counterfeit meanings. You can't even really call it a meaning. It's applied as meaning, but it's counterfeit. When they're training people who are under what you call social engineering controls, they train them with connotative linguistics. And so you can write that down as a quote. Connotative linguistics. This is so that such persons can't read contracts, they can't read wills, they can't read mortgages, and they read the books, the Bible, the Quran, the philosophy, etc. They don't know that they're Kabbalistic because they're not told. And so all of the books they read thoroughly, they take them in and they're really all sincere and misled. Because their perceptions and assumptions are really not what's there. Then they build their beliefs on what they have read, not knowing that they can't read. No different than with most of our people, Even people who got degrees that are intelligent, you can work them to their bones and give them one of these, and they will tell you they were given $1 and they were paid. But those who rule know that if they didn't give them this, they didn't give them $1. And people live their whole lives running after this and say they were paid and say they have money. And when they say that they have money, at that point, they're legally taxable because they tax the money. This is not money, it's fiat. But if they say it's money, they will be taken on their word, and then they will get them to sign a contract called a 1080 form, 1040, and other forms, like forms. With the Inquisition revenue services of the Jesuit order of the popes of Rome, the same Romans that murdered the prophets, still in operation, and these people pay homage and pay taxes via their labors to Rome under the guise, not under the fact, that they've been paid and they're dealing with money because they don't even know what fiat is. Pardon me, they don't even know what fiat is. And they call themselves knowledgeable, educated. And they're paying tithe as tax. And they think that the Internal Revenue Services is part of the United States government. It's the treasury of the Jesuits. And we're talking about people that know Jesus, God, Allah, and Prophet Muhammad, and going through all the rituals like they really spiritually connected, and they're seeing things that the unsaved people can't see. And they're right in the soup, right along with them. Do you understand where I'm coming from? And not because I say so, because I'm just simply showing you some things that can be demonstrated in fact, and yet most people are unaware of it, meaning that you're aware because we're bringing it up to you, and we can point it out to you, anybody can point it out to you. But you know and I know that most of the people, whether they're family members or not, are not aware of what I'm showing you on this board. And yet, what I'm showing you on this board is third level, third degree stuff. You should be getting this in the third grade. And yet, if you show this to most people, they're going to look at it, oh man, that's deep. Well, y'all know stuff, and I want to get this, so I'm trying to get this and understand this, and they're adults, and they should have got this in third grade. So what I'm saying this to you for is to demonstrate to you one of the reasons why we're easy victims. It is not because we are sincerely ignorant, is that we are ignorantly ignorant. Meaning that we don't even know that we don't know. But we're confident through our so-called beliefs that therefore we know. And that simply makes you easier victim. As an example, Romans can come in any community with their already pre-planned execution of robbing the widow's penny that you see in the Bible by writing or presenting them with dead pledges. Now, if they came in the community and said, we're going to give you a dead pledge, and we're going to make a compact with you, we're going to make an agreement with you, and it's a dead pledge, you would say, oh, I said, I don't know dead pledge. The pledge is dead. Who's the pledge? You are the pledge, and the contract is dead. And it's designed to protect us. And we'll be back in roughly 5 years, according to the chart, and then we're going to gentrify your neighborhood and take you to the house, because it's not yours. As a matter of fact, we're going to list you as a tenant. Now, if they told you that up front, most people wouldn't even go there, right? But guess what? That happens every day in our communities. Has been happening every day in our communities with all of these saved people that swear they're spiritual. Muslim, Christian, Jew, does not matter. They're all in the basket. Meanwhile, the imams, the reverends, and the preachers, etc., all know what I'm showing you here. And they all know, do you know what, as an example, and this is just like speak honestly and imagine that all these seats are full, and you kind of know what the answers would be most of the time. You can be pretty much guess. So if I asked you, what is the proper word for the definition dead pledge? What would your response be?
Mortgage.
You didn't say it loud enough.
Mortgage.
Yes, mortgage means dead pledge. So how many people get mortgages and sign stuff, and it's a dead pledge, and they can't read? But they do it in normal processes and assume, see what we're talking about, assumptions and presumptions? Assume that they own stuff. And assume even that they were loaned some money, neither of which took place, even in front of their faces. And they dedicate their lives to quote unquote pay mortgage payments and not even know that they can't even pay. It can only be discharged. And they don't even know that, but they're saved. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And they pass it to the next generation, and all we see is destruction. And then they claim to be spiritual. Do you kind of smell the contradiction? Not just see it, smell it. The scenario that I presented that can be added on to is one of the reasons why we're going to go through the reversioner. All right? And the reversioner is presented to you with the cognate position that you're aware of the real politics, meaning that what's really going on. All right? And I'm going to go through it a little bit and then discuss it with you while going through it to give you some concept of why it's done. And this is back to what I was saying to you, Dr. Naila. All right. Let me get my glass swabs. Retrieve me my glass swabs. I can't emphasize to you enough that what we're presenting to you is known by all your so-called elite leader guys. When you hear terms like Eastern Star, Masons, Skull and Bones, Knights Columbus, ETC, Knights Malta, etc., you may have different perceptions of what you think they are. Most of the perceptions that you will have, what you think they are, will be given to you by them. 90% of your perceptions are incorrect. It is a diversion to keep you from comprehending what is really going on. Most of the people who will criticize these organizations are a part of them and will not admit it publicly. What it is essential is what you call insider trading, meaning that how do you deal with humans? You deal with them from the perspective that they're not to know that they're really cattle. C-A-T-T-L-E. So they will be listed in law as chattel, which is French for cattle. And so they're less offended. And instead of calling them slaves, which is a connotative application of the subjugation of the Slovakian nations by Red Russians, etc., connotatively used, it means a person who's put into peonage and forced servitude. So that they're not offended, just call them wards of the state. And they think it's a beneficial title. Meanwhile, they're saved. Do you understand? So within 5 years, 5 or 10 years, according to the plan, they'll come into different neighborhoods and gentrify the neighborhoods with these people who are listed on quote-unquote deeds. They're charged with the burden of owner, and yet they're treated accordingly to the contract that they're only tenants. and they are sharecropping. But since they can't read, there's no worry or concern. They were given a dead pledge. The contract is dead, and they themselves are the pledge. And they can't figure it out because they're, quote unquote, saved. They know Jesus-ness and God-ness and Allah-ness, and they don't even know what the swell's going on. But they're also trained to be arrogant and to be self-righteous. It will preserve the corruption of the contracts, because they will be what? The defenders of their own frauds. And this is what it means in the nature when you look at the lessons of Yahshua in the book when he says, I come amongst my own and they receive me not. Which means, like for instance, in your secret societies, like in Masonry, all your different societies, one of the first lessons which are given is a Ruth the Moabitess. Now, how many of you are familiar with the Bible? Just raise your hand. All right, how many of you are familiar with Ruth? Raise your hand. All right, what book is that in the book, in the Bible? What?
It said Ruth.
What number?
Oh, what number?
The general number is, well, cutting to the chase, 39.
Okay.
How much is 3 and 9?
12.
All right. That has a coded meaning, but we're not going to go into
3.
that. Yeah. And 12.
Yeah.
Always breaking down to the common denominator also.
3.
Who was Ruth?
She was a Moabite.
Yes, she was a Moabite. Now we've established that.
Okay.
Now, what relationship does she have to an important figure in that Bible?
She married Boaz.
Well, we know that too. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think she's actually great, but she's in Atlanta.
Now, I want you all to pay attention. Let us pay attention to our interchange. It's important.
She was the daughter-in-law to Naomi.
You got that on the mic?
To Naomi.
Oh, you get.
Turn.
Now, what I want you all to do, I want you all to give a response. And this is for a lesson for all of us. All right? As well as for the people who are going to come to the House of Reawakening Minds and get the CD, because it will be important and they're going to need it more in the coming months than they ever imagined. Now, go ahead.
Okay, Ruth the Moabitess.
Yes.
She was married to Naomi's son who died, so she returned with Naomi to her land.
Mm-hmm.
She left the Moabite.
All right.
Moab. She left
Now,
Moab.
again, and the question is, what relationship does she have to one of the most important figures spoken of in the Bible? That's your question.
Okay.
Now, not that that relationship is not important,
Right.
but that's fine. Now, pass it on to her.
I think she was like the great grandma, or she's somewhere in there in Jesus' lineage.
Now, that's the answer. Now, what do you think he was? Give it the mic back. Ruth was a Moabitess. She's the great-great-great-grandmother of the one they called Jesus. What do you think he was? After all, he too, like his great-great-grandmother, had hair like lamb's wool, skin like burnished brass, called the copper tone. What do you think he was?
I'm all right.
Yes. That's an ancient name. Yes. Of ancient Asiatics. I wonder what people on the planet have that kind of appearance today. Who don't even recognize Ruth or him. Yet they talk about them all the time like they got a special relationship. Do you know what the modern name for the Moabites is?
Wow.
Get the mic. The modern name for Moabites. This is the question.
Would it be more?
Of course it is. And it's also Al-Moroccan. It is Al is Moorish Latin, descendants, Moroccan. Moroccan is the modern name for Moabite. The shortened version of Moabite is Moor. Now, these people say they love Jesus. What they don't recognize is their relationship. They are far removed.
Yes, definitely.
But they boast about a special spiritual relationship. And I'm only sending you through that little exercise to stimulate not what I say, but for you to start thinking. And then start thinking about our people and start thinking about some of the problems about ourselves. Because there are certain assumptions that our people have that they're spiritual because they pass these words around. And because they have that book. But I suggest to you that if they really study, they would find that they're really disconnected. And that their claims are unfounded, totally unfounded. And that they are far removed from their claim. That is not to condemn them. It is only to expose what needs to be exposed so they can start really being themselves again. In propria persona. In their own proper person. That we erased off the board. And I say that because I'm also going to mention another thing that I need you to write down. It's called, quote unquote, the common law. The common law is what do you have to say about the common law? Feel free, grab the mic and then pass it on. What do you have to say about, quote unquote, the common law? And I'm going to qualify so you're not confused. Everything that I'm presenting to you is relative. So don't look at it as separate subject matter, so you don't have to think hard. Just think honestly and be blunt. And don't be guessing. Say what is in your heart about it.
It's hypocritical.
Yeah. What is the common law? What do you have to say about the common law? Go ahead, get in the mic.
Mainly that it's hypocritical and that it just seems to essentially be, although you use common law, there seems to be one for the masses and another one for maybe the wealthy or the elite or those in high political places.
All right. Now, that's your answer. Good. And get this CD and look at it later.
Okay.
Give it a mic. What do you have to say about the common law?
I guess for me it would be what's understood or what's kind of assumed.
All right, good. Pass the mic on. What do you have to say about the common law?
I would say that the common law would be universal and it shouldn't change, it should be the same.
Now, keep this in mind. In all of these chairs, there's more forms in your fallopian tubes that can fill these chairs multiple times, which means you have the power to create and recreate nations upon nations already. Take this in consideration. Now pass this down to Dr. Nala. And then to Nala, get out your Black Small Dictionary, please.
Okay.
And you're going to look up the common law, but you're not going to express it like, what do you have to say about the common law, quote unquote?
Me,
Yes.
based on what it, we mean, like what?
No, not the question. Quote unquote, the common law.
Okay, the common law.
Yes. Nothing that we talked about is unrelative. It is all relative. So the question, what do you have to say about the common law?
That the common law is the law of the land.
Keep on.
The common law,
Don't say any more that's on your mind that you feel is right.
don't say, the common law trumps the man-made statutes that we live under or live by.
That is the closest to the correct answer. Now give Dee the mic, and I want you to read in essence what the common law is, and then we're going to discuss it a little bit, and I'm going to make scriptural relationship, so that you can see its importance and its function, to again show you that people's assumption that they're dealing what they think spirituality is when they're reading the books. They have not distinguished that which is civic and divine, because they're both in the books. And what the books have been misrepresented. Read the common law.
Common law.
Pay attention to this, because we're going to break this down to you.
As distinguished from the Roman law, the modern civil law, the canon law, and other systems, the common law is that body of law and juristic theory which was originated, developed, and formulated, and is administered in England, and has obtained among most of the states and peoples of Anglo-Saxon stock. Then it gives a law.
Go ahead, read. Yeah, read past that and stay with the substance.
As distinguished from law created by the enactment of legislatures, the common law comprises the body of those principles and rules of action relating to the government and security of persons and property, which derive their authority solely from usages and customs of immemorial antiquity, or from the judgments and decrees.
That's enough.
All right.
That's enough, because you're dealing with the heart.
All right.
See, this is the deal with the heart. Your capacity to honor your ancient mothers and fathers is by which the common law is recognized as being attached to you, and your capacity to make a claim on the common law in order to trump the Roman law, the ens legis, the straw, and all of the claims that they made. Thus your honor to your mothers and fathers imposes upon those who are in opposition to your position of right claim. The way you trump them is your capacity to recognize, to demonstrate, and show rightful cause to your relationship to the archaic, immemorial connection to the ancient traditions and customs of your ancient mothers and fathers. Your incapacity to do that brings you under the ens legis, thus the straw. So when you go before the magi, magistrates, who are really high priests, they already know, because they are studiers of your mothers and the sons, masonry, and they got your real culture, and they are holders of the Holy Grail. And if you think you're going to walk before them high priests and talk trash with your beliefs that have nothing to do with reality and get justice, Jesus means justice, see the code? It ain't happening. Meaning that while they are in many ways dishonorable, they also have a divine mission too, to punish you for your dishonor. For when you walk before the magi, the issue before the court of man is honor and dishonor. Which side are you on? Because you can't serve two masters.
Right.
Therefore, man, know thyself. Man, be yourself. The legal term for that is in propria persona. Can you read that in propria persona?
All right.
Now, I want to say that to you because I want to show you a relationship. And this is back to where people who really don't know jurisprudence don't know that the Bible's a law book and the law books are spiritual. and they're related. And so that creates more deception because people are presuming that they know certain things when they really don't. What that does, it keeps the corrupt priesthood in power, their lack of knowledge. And so the people are destroyed by the day for lack of knowledge. They got plenty of beliefs. They got tons, loads of that. They lack knowledge. In propria persona, what Dr. Naila erased, and we were talking about, I didn't get that on there. But I want to make this correlation to you, then we're going to go into reversioner, and then we'll make some relationship. Go ahead, sis.
In propria persona. Let me say this. This is from Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. So
Ancient and modern jurisprudence. So ancient and modern, and so that you're not left out. You don't get confused. Don't think this stuff has just arrived. Ancient and modern jurisprudence. And jurisprudence is the science that treats of positive law and the systems of law. And law and history go together. Go ahead.
in propria persona, in one's own proper person.
That's an exaggerated possessive statement, isn't it? It's almost redundant in it. In one's possessive, own possessive, proper person. Continue.
It is a rule and pleading that pleas to the jurisdiction of the court must be pled in propria persona.
Is must an optional word?
No,
Absolute.
must.
Is that maybe, or
No.
according to your opinion, or according to what belief you got?
Absolute.
You know, some people ain't into that. And now, start again and read that.
It is a rule in pleading that pleas to the jurisdiction of the court must be pled in propria persona, because if pleaded by attorney, they admit this jurisdiction as an attorney is an officer of the court, and he is presumed to plead after having obtained leave,
Which admits the jurisdiction. Which means they can't even challenge. And they're not even aware of their dead status. You see the problem? Yet all of this stuff is connected, and just as you see that trine up, you see the trine down. So the children of Israel do not know as above, so below. They do not know as ethereal, or what they call spiritual, is manifest in the aggregate. They do not know that there's a balance, and if the balance is violated, don't run around talking about your spiritual because you're out of balance. Imbalance would be called unease, or with a D-I-S, dis-ease. And so the people's lack of knowledge has caused social disease. And they're claiming to be spiritual. I suggest that the books must be presented to them properly so that they can start doing what? As the book says, physician, heal thyself. They're talking about the ills of the world. And so Yeshua is used as an example to demonstrate the capacity of man. It is really Kabbalistic, but it's telling you the truth. And so he goes through the suffering as so that he can succor those in need, to demonstrate the capacity of man, the obligation of man in relationship to parentage and to that which is divine and to self. And so those who don't understand will look at it just as a sacrifice, and that's not really what the message is in a sense. It's really talking about your development and your interchange with the lower self, which is represented by Rome. That would be reflected, in fact, in society. And so the people would be diverted by the mystery of the devil, which is simply also the light. That's why it's called lucent. or Lucifer, which actually means the light bearer. And if the people don't know better, they get angry not knowing that he's actually an assistant to the divine. And so the concept that would be given to the masses is actually incorrect. However, they will live according to that incorrect situation, and their lives will be miserable, and they'll be looking for cures while claiming to be spiritual because they don't understand the books are Kabbalistic. But that's the job of the priests, who themselves are the demons that they accuse the outside world of being, and they have been leeching off the people for all these generations. And so it's difficult for the people to come out of darkness because they assume that they're already in the light. Do you see the concept? Now, when it says honor your mothers and your fathers, now you see of immemorial antiquity, that means it goes beyond the first generation, beyond the second generation. Immemorial means even to a point where you have no cognate tracer. You see? So when it says to you, honor your mothers and your fathers, that your days may be longer upon the earth land. See, the preacher has been telling you it's a cloud. The book tells you earth land.
Well, sounds spiritual, it's up in the clouds, it's in the metaphysical.
The kingdoms on the earth. What, you'll keep saying you understand the book. Do you see the contradiction when you start really pointing things out? And it's quite difficult for people when they're trained in beliefs to really handle reality. Even though their experience in life demonstrates misery. Now, this is where you get the Kabbalistic lesson of long O, short O. Right? So in the Bible, it gives you a long O. It says Job. And then in the aggregate, it gives you the short O. And it says job. And so people got a job, and yet they're taking everything from them. Job.
Job, yeah.
Job, and they thought that they worked and worked and that they were going to have sustenance, and they would be able to, after working hard and fingers to the bone, that they would be able to retire and be comfortable and enjoy the fruits of their labor. And then Rome, via the IRS, comes and takes everything from them, and they don't recognize the book that they're living in, because they can't read. Are you kind of seeing where we're going? So, let's go to reversioner. Now, there were a couple of corrections that were made. So if there's some things that are missing or misspelled on yours, you'll recognize those corrections have been made, and so you may have what you would call some of the earlier editorials. Reversioner. This is a statement made by reversioner. I make no claim with respect to the title. Name, nom de guerre, is a title. And I surrender and assign any and all reversionary interests, quote unquote, to the United States and subsidiaries for full acquittance, discharge, settlement, and closure of my reliance, Title 12, United States Code 95A, Part 2. And I assume no liability and do not consent to stand as surety, quote unquote, for any point, moment in time. Now, that's an affirmative statement, but if you don't understand the politics, you will not understand that statement. You see?
Right.
If you don't understand what's going on, you will not understand that statement. If you're not aware of what's going on, you will never make that statement. Why? Because one, the average person does not know they have an estate because they were never told. The average person thinks they've been paying bills and they never were, because bills cannot be paid. particularly anybody who's born after 1933. Meanwhile, they're claiming to be saved, they claim to know the Lord Jesus and Allah, and they made salat and a whole bunch of other things, and they tithing and everything. And then they lie. When did they lie? They will write it and sign on a contract that they made money. The statement's a lie, and the intent of what they say is a lie. Number one, if you made money, you would be saying that you took gold and silver raw and coined instruments that we call money. So you didn't make money, so that's a lie. So the statement is a lie, and so now they already got you for fraud. You don't know that, they're just not going to charge you. Right? Now, I'll show you the supreme law of the land. Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, states that what? No state can make treaties, right? It's your name mark of reprisal, or coin anything but gold or silver coin for payment of debt. That's the Constitution, the American Constitution, Article 1, Section 10. The supreme law of the land. We're not just talking about somebody's idea. Supreme law of the land. Third grade again. And so people are given fiat that was created by Romans occupying the Western Hemisphere. And they've been lying and saying they made money. And when you make that statement, it means you're taxable because you said so. Are we clear?
Clear.
Then they fill out a form for the Queen of England, called a 1040 and 1080 form, etc. And W4, W1, all the rest of them, which is a tribute to England via the secret Treaty of Verona made by the Christian nations, which is really Constantine, to pay tribute to fulfill the obligation of the secret treaty of the Queen of England with the Vatican. 40% of the outlay goes to the Queen as a collector, and the other 60% goes to the Vatican, to the Jesuit order, which comprises 100%. That's fact, what I just told you. Now, isn't it interesting how all of these people, with all of their salvation, and all of their, I got Jesus-ness, and all the rest of the stuff, and I know Allah, and I made salat, and everything, and we saved, and everything, and they're wondering why their communities are poor. Of course, the devil did it, didn't he? But did you get the whole point? And they're paying for their own enslavement. And too arrogant to study to even know the difference. And when you give them this information, well, that's interesting, but I ain't into that because, see, we're spiritual. You see the contradiction?
Yes.
Not only do they lack knowledge, but they're not even aware that they don't even know. And keep this in mind, and you will hear this statement, and it's valid. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. And then as soon as you start making excuses, you're already in contempt. You're better if you said nothing. Now you're going to get even worse treatment. See, because people who claim to know God, Jesus, Allah, when God's going to kick the devil's butt, they know the Bible, Quran, Waspi, the Pentateuch, and everything, and they saved and everything, going through this generations of generations and supporting all these buildings all over the place that's will be houses of God and stuff, then certainly they should know the fundamental rules in front of their faces. If they know all about these gods who they do not see, and don't know anything about their brothers and sisters or their own bloodline that they see every day, that's the supreme level of hypocrisy. And of course, the treatment that they get, they say it's racism and prejudice. They say it's a lot of things. Well, ignorance is costly. So you're giving this information to remove some of the ignorance so that we can solve some of the economic, social, political, and quote-unquote spiritual problems in our community, i.e., let's bring some cure and remedy to the situation, which is why you're giving this information. So we're going to go into reversioner. So that statement is imparted with your being conscious that the popes of Rome have hypothecated your labors, present and future, all corporate entities, which means you incorporated, they hypothecated that. Hypothecated is a legal way of saying steal, garner,
Strong.
claim ownership to something without physically possessing it in their hand, and then creating instruments and selling it on the stock market as if they're the owner. And that's what's been going on. That's what the bondage is that you were told was a chain. And done by magi, who you called spiritual. Even the rage bond certificates was sold by the local priests and delivered to the Department of Commerce and filed in the Department of Orphans that made your children non-descendable and state wards even before they came out the womb. That's done by your local reverends. That you be talking that are spiritual. We're not talking speculation. We're talking provable fact. If you don't believe it, just type in the computer for those who can read. What is a marriage certificate really? With a question mark. And then read what you find. What is already known? And what it is? It's a contract. And the corporate state is the first party. And you and the woman, or you and the man, are ships passing in the night. And your contract is with them. And so whenever there's any estate or any buildup of any wealth in that so-called marriage, it automatically goes into probate if there's any attempt to dissolve or to move any properties, etc., because it ain't your stuff.
Wow.
It's theirs first. And what's ever left, if they decide they don't want to tax you out of it, you'll have some of it. Most of the time they'll tax you out of it. And if you leave it to your children, they will burden it with such a tax that they have to abandon it. And you thought you owned stuff. But we're saying though, again, this is why that's in your hand. Even though much of what we have spoken of is not said here, it is with you already knowing what's really taking place. This would be your response for instruments that come in the mail that tell you to pay bills, to pay mortgages, to pay fines. This statement is made before the Magi because what you're telling them, I know what your obligation really is. I know what our relationship really is. I know that I'm the heir to the estate. I know that you're really a fofer and an administrator, and that you're really not a judge. And that the claim that you presented to my state is really already discharged, and you're coming again to ask me to give my labor by virtue of the Federal Reserve, because it isn't money. You're making sure that I'm transferring my labor energy to you, and that those Federal Reserve notes are digital bookkeeping instruments only, but you thought I didn't know it. And in the law of the state, because we are under occupation by Rome, that you're obligated by international law to discharge the debt against my estate, because you know I can't pay, because you all came here to steal our gold and silver, and you have done just that. and according to international law, we are under occupation, and you are obligated to discharge, not because I said so, because your own law says so. And that law is called 12 U.S.C. 95A Part 2. You see? Are we clear?
Clear.
So, most people don't even know that's what's in place.
Right.
Most people don't even know that they're already considered dead. That's why when you start talking, they charge you with contempt. Unless another man from England, who's a deputy knight for the Jesuit order, speaks for you. It's called representation. And if you try to represent yourself, it's usually a foolish move, which indicates you really don't know what's going on. Again, that's why you're given this in your hand. If you have insight, you can read between the lines and read what is not written, by virtue of having the capacity to comprehend what is written. Because this little bit that I put right here can be a book like this, but it need not be if you comprehend what's behind it. So if you're quote unquote spiritual, you will see. If you're not, you won't. So we're just trying to help you along in order that you can become effective and actually have the capacity to counter the doctors of the law. You see? That's not speculation. That's not just allegorical. I'm telling you bluntly, straightforward, that that's what it is. All right? So let's read through this, and if you feel like making some comments or you have some questions, ask. So we're going to read through it, and then we're going to back up, okay? All right?
Yes.
So I make no claim, and this is why. See, so I separated that so I boxed it so you can understand that this is primal, speaking with a cognizance that the rest of this is already known and you really know the real history. And you know who you are. If there's a bunch of people in here and some really don't know, they may agree, but it goes like that, it's because they need to be given a foundation. So I try to give you a little bit of foundation so that you can share this with your family members if you share this information, so it doesn't so it doesn't do that. The above affirmative statement in concept or relative content made by a conscious asserter, and everything that you see I have italicized, those are legal positions, and this is why we also tell you that you must have law books so you'll know what's going on every day. But if you're not familiar with these things, understand that they go on every day. You're just not made familiar because they don't want you to be able to defend yourself. It makes you victim because you're playing checkers on a chessboard. You get the point? So the above affirmative statement in concept or relative context made by a conscious asserter may be used to rebut an injurious or wrongful assumption made by another, or to revert one's rightful legal position, status, estate, and standing when put into an unconscionably assumed position of obligatory debt or subjection as imposed by persons doing business as the foreign corporate United States or by any other foreign person, agent, or agency. A reversioner in law is one who has a reversion or right to receive an estate in reversion. Reversion is derived from the Old Moorish Latin word reversio, derived from reversus, see reverse. Also see revert, which means to go back in action, thought, speech, etc. To return as to a former practice, opinion, state, or subject, or as in law, to go back to a former owner or his heirs. Think of this as in the nature of restitution, or in an action bringing about the return or the giving back of some property, some estate, or in general, the giving back to the rightful owner or heir of something that has been lost or taken away, as in the word restored. For example, in the case of United States versus Verona, 120 U.S. 479, 1887, the Supreme Court held that Congress had the authority under the Define and Punish Clause, so you would recognize that you should already be knowing the Constitution. This is assumed that you already studied. You see the point? To declare the counterfeiting within the United States of the notes, quote unquote, of a foreign bank or corporation was an offense against the law of nations. I'm not going to read the law cases, I'm just going to stay with the substance. Reasoning that if the thing made punishable is one which the United States are required by their international obligations to use due diligence to prevent, it is an offense against the law of nations. This court has also recognized that the Define and Punish Clause authorizes Congress to derive from the often broadly phrased principles of international law a more precise code necessary to bring the United States into compliance with rules governing the international community. In a sense of tribunal decisions, treaties, and other authoritative pronouncements, the international community has made it plain that directly facilitating acts of terrorism or other war crimes cannot be tolerated. And so I put definitions here so that you would have the opportunity of looking at the definitions that would eliminate part of your obligation to go into a law book, knowing that most people don't have it readily available to them. Although I could have added more, I did a comprehensive primary insertion of the things that are contained within reversion so that your concepts would be correct. So facts, definitions, points of study, including legal terms or phrases. 1. Reversion or estate in reversions relates to the residue of an estate left by operation of law in the grantor or his heirs or in the heirs of a testator, commencing in possession on the determination of a particular estate granted or devised. Reversion also relates to any future interest left in a transferor or his successor, and is a vested interest or estate, inasmuch as a person entitled to it has a fixed right to future enjoyment. The term reversion has two meanings. First, as a design of designating the estate left in the grantor during the continuance of a particular estate, and also the residue left in the grantor or his heirs after termination of a particular estate. It differs from a remainder in that it arises by act of law, whereas a remainder is by act of the parties. A reversion, moreover, is the remnant of the whole estate disposed of after a presiding part of the same has been given away. And so you're going to have to study to understand what that means. That means even if someone who has been a trustee or trustor or in a position of administering an estate has been mismanaging it or whatever, they've dispensed from the estate, whatever is left in or any profits or anything related to it is still part of the estate and you have right of claim to it. And if it's been mismanaged, you have right of a claim to it. You need to know that, because if you don't make the claim, it is considered waived. So if you're not aware that you even have an estate, you're never going to have this kind of conversation. You're going to be talking about rights, and I need a right to vote, and what we need to do is march and then recognize that we're human beings. You're talking all, and that's really not what you should be talking. Do you understand what I'm saying? Which would continue to demonstrate that you're incompetent. And logically, an incompetent heir cannot receive an estate. Then with you transacting business in European names automatically makes you an ineligible heir, even though your bloodline is related. Because it's in dishonor. Because you must honor your mothers and your fathers in order to have an estate. So if your mothers and fathers are Asiatics, Africans, and you're pretending to be European, you just lost your estate. And by default, they are managing it, so they, by default, are benefiting. Because you refuse to honor your mothers and fathers, and you sitting around talking about prejudice and racism. And the fact is that you're trying to sell pit bulls as elephants. And you ain't figured that out yet? That you can't transact business in another man's name and not be agency? You can't buy and sell in another man's name and be the owner. What point you think that you can go around talking about you Sears and Roebucks and then talk about you supposed to be wealthy? No, you're just an agent.
Yeah, but our sign says in Roebuck, and my grandma's name says in Roebuck.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
No, it wasn't. That belongs to some European that held her to servitude. At what point you don't understand that?
Well, I can vote, because we marched and prayed, and now we can vote.
No, it's called a privilege. And every other praetor or every other president after the Congress and the Senate decides whether these cattle can vote with them names that don't belong to them. It's called Voting Rights Act. And it's a privilege, it's not a right. What point y'all don't understand is y'all been voting with somebody else's names?
Well, we used to it and said, therefore,
Keep it up. And you don't want to render them to Caesar, one to Caesar, it's fine. And anything you buy or sell with the mark or the number of that name belongs to the state. At what point you don't understand that book that y'all said y'all been reading? And the book says, look, it says, I hold my hand out all the day long to a hard-hearted people, hard-hearted and rebellious people who are not called by my name. When they repent from their sinful ways, I will hear from heaven and heal their land. Another part of the book says, you've robbed me of a whole nation of people. And then the respondent says, how say thee that we have robbed God, even of a whole nation of people? And it follows up and says this, yes, you robbed me of a whole nation of people and put your name on them as a curse. But I will slay thee and call them by another name. How does that statement revert into the modern world for all these quote-unquote spiritual people? It's simple. It's called nationalization. But yet on the surface, most of them would never even recognize that if you just said nationalization. They won't even recognize this in the book. Because they can't read.
Dishonor.
Another one, when it closes out the Old Testament, it says, and it only has 4 chapters, dealing with the 4 gates. Son of righteousness arises with healing in his wings. Turn your hearts back to your mothers and fathers, lest I come to smite the earth with a curse. Closes out the Old Testament. And they still don't recognize themselves. You see the point? But they claim to know them books. And they claim to be spiritual. We have a problem here. And we got to fix it without people necessarily getting offended. So you got to bring it in such a way to make them understand that their concepts of spirituality is flawed, and they need to humble themselves. You know, don't be a carpet, but humble themselves and begin to get some understanding. And understanding that prophecies are post-dated checks for human experience. And so when they read that Bible, that Quran, and the prophecies, though it's 2,000 years ago, they need to look in a mirror because they're here today. They just forgot themselves. And because they've been following after the idol gods of Rome that they knew nothing of, they call themselves spiritual, but they are not. They say, Lord, 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 but their hearts are far removed. Interesting thing, they They don't even recognize themselves. However, they do recognize that they're suffering, even though they deny it. They do recognize that they build temples and have no place to lay their heads, but they say they're spiritual. They work hard all their lives and accumulate a lot of things, and they're 1 week's pay from the curb. And they ain't figured it out yet. Job. So he made them curse their God and took all their stuff. And they still don't know what a 1040 form is. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And then when the things culminate and Rome comes and takes their stuff, they don't even have a cure because they don't know what to do. Except they were going to the weeds, it's getting ready to rain. Go find an old refrigerator box or hope they got some friends. Look what's happening today. How many, now you're young, so you can relate even more than we can because we've, gone through many things. How many of your friends do you know, even though it's not in conversation, that are about to leave college, full of debt, and hope their mom got a garage or a corner in the basement for them to move into if they're still holding on to the house? And while everybody's going through all this, everything, knowing, for the most part, most of them, they ain't got nowhere to go. Less more, any good Jobs, to even pay the debt. See that paragraph there? An unconscionable debt. And I guarantee you, they're not going to pay it, even if they think they are. And they talking about their spiritual. I suggest they don't even know what's going on. But also we have the danger of most of them being too arrogant to recognize when rescue is being brought to them, because they're blinded by their belief systems. And therefore, sort of like somebody in the river, we're walking down the street, going around the corner near the stream, near the river, and you just notice, you hear this noise and this splashing, and someone's in the middle of the stream choking, and you could see they're drowning, and you know that you can't just jump in and go get them because they might pull you under. And you notice that someone has a life raft nearby, and it's on a rope, and then you toss it out there in the middle of the stream, grab the life raft, grab the life raft, and they look at the life raft. Is that plaid? I ain't into plaid, that's not my belief. And this is pretty much what people do when you bring them truths that don't match their belief systems. They're drowning and too arrogant to recognize even when they're being rescued because it doesn't match their beliefs. In fact, that's part of the problem with our people in their blindness when they can't see there's a relationship to all of this stuff. Because they're assuming that they're spiritual and they're assuming that they're saved. Therefore, they don't need nothing else. They already got it. And they're just simply easy food for the vampires. And this is where the statement comes, my people are destroyed by the day for lack of knowledge. Because the priest said it's a lack of prayer, it's a lack of tithing, it's a lack of belief. That book didn't say that. The book said a lack of knowledge. No, it ain't called our belief. And there we go. What they say they know the book. See the problem? So again, reversioner is dealing with reality. They're being unplugged from the matrix, from the false mother. Matrix means womb. Now you see where the European uses the phrase, the legal phrase, parentis, patre, parentis, read it. And they actually use this term. This is the position that is taken right now by the corporate state in relationship to these people who keep saying that they're spiritual. And they even made movie Sister. The sister wrote that whole series, The Matrix, even though they stole it from her. And Matrix means womb. They still screaming, they ain't paid her. They still messing her around. Yeah, winning is getting it back. It's called, has her right been reverted? That's what you got in front of her. Has it been restored? She needs this too. But I guarantee you, the one part of the problem, she's not even in a proper person, not even knowing that she can't make the claim.
No, because she's steward. She's called
It doesn't mean that her argument isn't valid. But she doesn't even know status.
Perpetrators, right?
And more than likely, even though we've talked to her, and even brought her on the radio station a couple times, you can still see, even when you try to give them certain information, they're resistant because they think they know.
Right.
And, but it is what it is.
Stick to the system, don't rock the boat.
People actually, our danger is when we don't recognize our own ignorance.
Right.
And yet we can be so genius in feeding the system and not capable or willing to feed ourselves. When you look at all of the so-called inventions, almost all of your modern inventions, from the refrigerator to air conditioning to
traffic light
to everything else, were invented by Asiatics, cotton gin, and everything else. Who got the credit? Europeans.
light bulb.
Yep, same
Ancient.
thing. And what were they doing? They were transacting business in European names. But they didn't see the folly. Just like Dred Scott, most important slave case ever come before the Supreme Courts of the United States. Person of Asiatic African descent had some Europeans represent him in court as what? Dred Scott. And he was returned to his slave master. What made him think that he could be a free man, claiming to be somebody that he's not? Because you must be in propria persona, in one's own proper person, to have right of claim. Lest the court already has jurisdiction and they already have leave. At what point do these so-called spiritual people figure this out? Yet. This stuff is not complex. It has to do with honor and dishonor. Your attachment to your ancient traditions and customs of immemorial antiquity. It's there in the law book, and how many people would read that and wouldn't even recognize what they're reading, even while it's there? They don't even know how to read between the lines. And so when they talk about it's administered in England, most of their minds would stop right there. And then it tells you immemorial antiquity. It means it goes beyond them. So then people weren't even thinking the Renaissance, when the Moors took the jurisprudence into England and brought them out of the Dark Ages, and then the Europeans did what? They started wearing wigs to imitate the Moors. And what did they call themselves? Wigamores. This stuff is not really hidden.
They did more than they wear wigs. They did women wore bustles.
Yeah.
The men had the wigs, the women had the bustles.
They had keisters. The Dr. Knightley's poem, I say, what you get them for free?
Kids, butts, and tans, and some have to buy a things we get for free.
And when you look at it, this stuff is not far beneath the surface. It really isn't. But it goes to show you how much damage blindness can really do. But go ahead, sister.
All right.
When you get to it, give her a mic. You got the mic?
Oh, yeah. Parents Petraea is spelled
Spell it.
P.
I want you all to put this down, y'all, because this is important, because you need to know that this is actually in operation as we speak. When you go to the corporate state, get marriage certificates, mortgages, or registrations of any type, birth certificates, etc. The registration comes under this term. Spell it.
P-A-R-E-N-S, that's the first word.
P-A-R-E-N-S.
N-S.
Is
P-A-R-E-N-S.
yeah. Parents.
Propria. P-A-T-R-I. And then what's that symbol?
A-E.
A-E.
Yeah.
Propria.
Yeah. And there's usually, they'll do it like this. But that's like an AE symbol.
Yeah.
Now, you need to know that this is a legal phrase, and we're not just giving it to you, this is in operation as we speak. When you're reading this instrument, reversioner, you're supposed to already kind of know this. Do you understand? And the real reason what I'm saying to you is that if I continue, it would turn into a book. So we have to depend on that you have been taking notes, that you've been studying, that you have an understanding and a comprehension of why we're doing what we're doing, why you come to these classes, why it's important for you to invest in yourself. While we tell you how to get law books, get unabridged dictionaries, and we tell you what ones you need so you don't even have to figure it out. You know, but you must be as determined to invest in your own education, that which has been denied you almost all your life. If you value yourself enough, you will invest in yourself. If you don't, it becomes a burden. Let me see. I ain't gonna buy that book that costs $75, costs $250. I can't get them Air Jordans because the Air Jordans cost $250. I'll get it next year. Meanwhile, you just throw it out your house. This is how people do. They'll go make a car payment on a nice car and the windows falling apart and the roof is leaking. I'm gonna get to it. I'm telling you, and our people's minds are kind of really messed up. And we can do the best we can to try to get them to save themselves. And hopefully it will get to the youth that are less contaminated, you know, because they're not thinking. Yeah, they're not thinking, oh, if I really tell the truth, I'm gonna lose my job. So they're not burdened with a lot of those threats. And they're usually more willing to tell the truth. They're not, translation, they're not as contaminated.
Or fearful.
But the people don't even know that they're contaminated. Do you understand that? They won't even admit that they're contaminated. Denial is also dangerous. So, anyway, this is a legal term. Can you read it, please?
Parents propria. I'm looking at the front of the book and it says, how you pronounce it, it's parents
Patre.
Patri or parents patri.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, father of his country, parent of the country.
This is where you get the father for the priesthood, also with a George Washington who had taken the estates and they take the E off and then making the states. And so the people don't know that the corporate states are really administrators of their estate, which is under occupation. You need to know what's really happening. Do you understand also why women were removed from the priesthood? Because you're dealing with Rome. Continue.
In England, the king. In the United States, the state as a sovereign, referring to the sovereign power of guardianship over persons under disability.
See, under disability is a nice way of saying you're incompetent.
Such
It
as,
ain't like people rolling around in wheelchairs. You're incompetent.
such as minors and insane and incompetent persons.
Yeah. Now, that's where wards of the state. Now, just go to wardship. Go to wardship. And then you'll understand why different words we give you all. It's almost like we gotta give you a mirror and then give you multiple mirrors to begin to start looking at yourself to see what's wrong, because only you can correct it. In other words, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You can tell the people the truth about the real history of the law and what's really happening to them, but only they can decide whether or not they want to serve Rome or they want to honor their mothers and fathers. But they need to know what's really happening so that they can see it for themselves. The other deal is that our people don't really think that other people see us the way we're being betrayed. We think they're looking at us differently. They're looking at you as a roast turkey, and they come and take a leg, and go back, and they're on a rotisserie. And next week is your neighbors, and it's your family members. And most people don't really respond until it's them or their family. Then they want to get serious. But it happens all around for generation after generation. It doesn't begin, it's always been going on. But the people are in denial. You know, go ahead.
Wardship. In military tenures, the right of the Lord to have custody as guardian of the body and lands of the infant heir without any account of profits until he was 21 or she 16. In Sokich, the guardian was accountable for profits, and he was not the Lord, but the nearest relative to whom the inheritance could not descend.
Could not. Now, so the Sokich is referring to a child still on the mother's breast. And this is where the Romans are taking the children's foot, stamped it on the birth certificate, and said that this child, the mother sold the child, and the child signed itself away. And that's what they're holding you bound with today with the birth certificate under House Joint Resolution 192, which is mentioned by Trafficon. And so they've hypothecated, which is mean under legal process, stolen the bodies of the heirs and the infants even before they were born. How's it done? It's done with the Mars negative on a downflow and rage with you, the I in the middle. Marriage certificate to claim the eggs and remove the truth of matrimony and the matriarchy. And now the popes have claimed the eggs, and with the birth bond, birth certificate, they claim the eggs that hatch. And then with that birth certificate, it goes on the stock market. And that's what's backing up the T-bonds, the treasury bonds. Go ahead, Dr. Nada. Now you look, keep your mic.
Islam, I just have a question with regard to the Mars rage.
Marriage is really a spell cast.
Right, the marriage certificate. What happens in the instance when you have what they call illegitimate births? That
There is none. They make that claim. There's no such thing as an illegitimate child. It is a claim made up by the popes of Rome by which they can regulate the offspring under the rule of chattel property. However, continue so that we can analyze.
Yeah, well, the question was, since the marriage or the marriage certificate is used to lay claim to the eggs as a result, and then of course
they're born. In other words, that's where you get the term they're born in sin. But there's a two ways to look at it. Kabbalistically, everybody's born in sin, which means everybody's born under the movement of the moon. Sin is the real name of the moon. But they put a negative on it so that you can curse in your mind the energy that's in the child while the child's evolving in the most important university, the womb. So it comes out already subdued and mentally injured because it's violating divine laws and nature, because as a man thinketh, so is he. And man is the species, not a gender. They are high priests. And as soon as our people learn how to read, you know, everything that is really divine, they actually put a negative on it. And so they don't have to guard us anymore, because we cast spells on ourselves. Even when you look in the early period of our subjugation, those amongst our people who knew were creating through song and enchant good spells to cast away the negative spells of the high priest of Rome, and it's called gospel. They used to be scientific, Kabbalistic chants and songs that kept the culture alive and kept code systems for liberation alive. Now they've become beautifully sung begging songs. Oh, they can sing beautifully. They're all begging songs. Most of them. And most people think the gospel songs came from the church. No, they went into the church after they were forced in. And they were the methods of preserving the culture. And now, they're nothing what they really was. People don't even know what gospel is. They'll say gospel, don't even know it means good spell.
Cast some of those spells, that's them witches.
Which means wise woman. And then they think that's the devil. You know, and they even give you it symbolically in the Wizard of Oz. You know,
Witch, bad witch.
even with Dorothy, even with, you know, the lion, which represents what? The Moabites, tribe of Judah, tribe of Judah. You know, and then you got the straw man that was made up after they closed the Freedman's Bureau. That's what the straw man is. And then the Tin Man is industry. They created industry and stagnated. That's why he's rusty. Then the yellow brick road is the zodiac constitution of the ancient Moabites, Canaanites. And then Emerald City is the green star of Venus, because green is the color or the tone that copper takes when it's exposed to the air and to moisture. And we used to cap all of our buildings, the cupolas, in either gold or copper. Even some of your old buildings, you'll still see the eaves are clad in copper. The ones from the early 1900s and 1800s. Now people can't afford to do it. However, that's part of your culture. And yet they're talking to the people and the people still don't get it. You know, and even when, you know, symbolically, you know, the witch of the east and the witch of the west, they're giving you keys. And then the witch says, hey Doc, do you like them Gucci sneaks, them jewelry heels there? And Doc said, oh, I'm just so afraid. I just want to go home. And then the witch says, ching! And then the shoes go on Dorothy's feet. And she, oh, Dad, these is tight. All right. And then the socks, curl up. Because you got a birthright in it. These people still don't get it. They actually make movies and tell us to our faces what's really going on, and we still don't get it. Martin Morris, Black Knight.
Yeah, the Black Knight.
And then he looks at this pendant. Oh, what's this Moor thing? And everybody looking for him to cure everything. He won the money, everybody looking for him to cure. And he looking at himself as an inferior. You understand? Morgan Freeman with
Robin Hood.
Robin Hood. And they're looking for the Moor because he got all the science, the cure, the medicine, and everything. And he gives the European the telescope, you know, looking glass, and man, what the hell? You know, and we lost knowledge of ourselves. Wild Wild West with Will Smith. And the guys in this spider, that's not accidental that they use that symbolic. And then there's flying, and he says, and he backs him up to the door like he's going to push him out, and he says, you don't like a handsome black or more. You know, they're talking every day, and who tell these people that they're black? They're leader guys who are overseers, and they get a 501c3 agreement with Skull and Bones, and then tell people that they don't pay taxes because they're teaching the word. And that's set up by Skull and Bones, Lyndon Baines Johnson, to control his marching overseer guys, to get these people to agree to be people of color and to be 14th Amendment marching, we can vote citizens, which makes them corpses. Dead, they're zombies in law. And most of those guys who are marching and praying are what? 33-degree Masons, and have been taken to the mountaintop and shown all the secrets. And the people think they're men of God, of Jesusness. And here we go, this continues generation after generations, and all they see is misery and poverty and getting shot down in the street 50 times for that was just my wallet. And it's like, hopefully we can get our people to change their state of mind and thus change the atmosphere, because they are connected just that succinctly.
You wanted to ask about the,
Wait a minute, here.
dedication.
Wait.
Can't hear you. You got to be on.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to ask you about the sandwiches.
It's on.
Really have jelly on them.
Go ahead.
No, we wanted to ask, I was asking you to inquire about the, when we were talking about the marriage certificates and the
Marriage?
birth certificate. So this birth certificate.
They are bonds. First of all, let's back up. Let's slow down.
Okay.
Marriage certificates were set up by the DAR, Daughters of the American Revolution. In other words, they are the order, the matriarchy order over the Caicos, or what you call Ku Klux Klan. Their oath is to do all that is possible, that you do not get into power again, or that you're not in what you call administrative powers. They set up the marriage code system, and they set up the marriage license. And of course, the people who can't read don't know that they're dealing astrologically. We're talking about the energies, how things really work. Mars is also referred to as the planet of war. And the reason they call it planet of war, because we did have a lot of wars on Mars, which is why Mars became somewhat desolate. And the those who really know that we are not already or only on this planet. The people here who have been miseducated by Rome think that this is the only place we've been, and they think that this is the only place we are on, both of which is not true. Because of other wars that took place on Mars, you have what you call spotty areas. And so also because of when the Bureau came through thousands or a few thousand millennia ago, it was hit with a lot of meteors and asteroids. And there's a total relationship between the Earth and Mars. And also, unbeknownst to the people that we've been traversing still between this planet and that planet, still, in spite of that past time and the lost cycle time, still been transferring between the planets. And they've got thousands of humanoids that are indigenous to the planet, and they also have thousands of people from this planet who have been transferring to that planet, and they've been doing it, and most recently since the 40s. Even though some of them, a lot of them have been eaten up by the different reptiles and stuff that are there. And so this is another reason why they dig the tunnels. And so a lot of the things that you see on the surface, as pyramids and different faces, are simply markers for them to escape or to go back under the ground. And so they come out under careful situations, because there's still some animal forms there that are swift and quite large or vicious, that are relative to many of what you would call the prehistoric animals that we don't see too many of here on the planet, although all of them here are not really gone, even though the people think they are. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things that the people really don't know about themselves. But getting back to point, we need to learn how to navigate here first. Now, refine your question again.
I was going to just read, while we were on the subject of the marriage license and the birth certificate, I was asking you to inquire about a lot of information being out.
yeah.
A lot of information is out here and telling people to authenticate the birth certificate because it's being used by Rome. So my question had been, why should we authenticate something that doesn't belong to them, belong to someone else?
Now, let's go into your reversioner and go to the congressional records with Traficant's speech on the floor. Go into your reversioner.
I don't know, do they have the whole document?
No, we're just going to go into a section here.
Yeah.
Now, this is the United States Congressional Record, March the 17th, 1993. And keep in mind, while it's not being mentioned here, this is to be read with the cognizance of you knowing what was done by Woodrow Wilson, and also with you knowing what was spoken on the floor in 1932 and in 1934 by Louis McFadden on the floor. Also, as you know, they later killed him when he went to visit his daughter they poisoned him when he went to visit his daughter in New York.
And Traficant just died on September 27th.
Yeah, I know, but we're talking about, and they say it's an accident, but it's not.
Tractor.
Yeah, anyway. And then plus, because so much of this has been discussed, particularly when we start, talking, etc., and then he's still belligerent. He has not backed off.
No, he hadn't.
He still stood on his word. And so that's what they do. Do you understand? Because actually all Europeans are either Knights Templars, Shriners, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, and their benefit has been by keeping these secrets and then keeping our people subjugated. And when, like say he put something like this, and then we can use this against them.
Yes.
So he becomes sacrificial. This is why he also put him in jail 7 years. You understand? But let's go ahead. No, I need you to open that up.
I'll only have the one.
You go ahead.
Here you are, Miss.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Give it a mic. Who was that behind you? Now,
Okay, what do you want me to read?
now, you're going to read like page 9, and it may not be on there because you're going to the version that you have.
Yeah, I got 11, it's on page 11 in this one.
Yeah, then you got the updated, I got old stuff here.
Page 9.
Anyways, the United States Congressional Records.
March
Yes.
15th, okay.
Now, that's James Traficant, and this is with you having a pre-knowledge of Louis McFadden and his speech on the floor, 1932 and 1933. And of course, that's not in here, but like I told you about everything that comes to my mind, about it become a book, and we're trying to make it be what you need to know conceptually. All right, now read that.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, Representative James Tarik Bey, Jr., Representative of Ohio, addressing the House. Volume 33, page H-1303. United States Congressional Record, March 17, 1993. Mr. Speaker, we are here in Chapter 11. Members of Congress are official trustees presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in world history.
I want to pause right there and let you understand. So you must already have a knowledge that the United States is a corporation, it's not a country, although they've been telling you it's a country.
Yes.
This is presuming that you don't need to be convinced other than that, so that you don't get your head twisted about what you're really dealing with, knowing that the masses don't know better, you're supposed to know better. But this is also to demonstrate to you that the politicians already know this. They know that the masses are miseducated. The masses think the United States government is a country. They even think America is a country. They don't even know that America is 2 continents, because they have the mentality of minors. Now you understand why the people are called minority? And yet most people assume that they're intelligent, and they will be making all kinds of statements with authority like they really are educated, and they're looked at as zombies. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Yes. But continue. But continue to read through. Read through to the second page. Go ahead.
To the second page.
Keep on reading. Just keep on reading. I'll tell you when to stop.
All right, I'll have to be revert so I can get my place. Members of Congress are official trustees presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in the world, the U.S. government. We are setting forth, hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it is a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March 9, 1993.
No, 33.
1933, sorry. Emergency Banking Act, March 9, 1933, 48 Stat 1, Public Law 89-719, declared by President Roosevelt, being bankrupt and insolvent. House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress in session June 5, 1933. Joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause dissolved the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental officers and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. The receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers via the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. All United States office officials and departments are now operating within a de facto status in name only under emergency war powers. With the constitutional Republican form of government now dissolved, the receivers of the bankruptcy have adopted a new form of government for the United States. This new form of government is known as a democracy, being an established socialist communist order under a new governor of America. This act was instituted and established by transferring and or placing the office of the Secretary of Treasury to that of the Governor of the International Monetary Fund. Public Law 94-564, page 8, section HR 13955 reads in part, the U.S. Secretary of Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States. Gold and silver were such a powerful money during the founding of the United States of America that the founding fathers declared that only gold or silver coins can be money in America. Since gold and silver coinage were heavily and inconvenient for a lot of transactions, they were stored in banks, and a claim check was used as a money substitute. People traded their coupons as money or currency. Currency is not money, but a money substitute. Redeemable currency must promise to pay $1 equivalent in gold or silver money. Federal Reserve notes, FRNs, make no such promises and are not money. A Federal Reserve note is a debt obligation of the federal United States government, not money. The federal United States government and the U.S. Congress were not and have never been authorized by the Constitution of the United States of America to issue currency of any kind, but only lawful money, gold and silver coin. It is essential that we comprehend the distinction between real money and paper money substitute. One cannot get rich by accumulating money substitutes. One can only get deeper into debt. We, the people, no longer have any money. Most Americans have not been paid money for a very long time, perhaps not in their entire life. Now do you comprehend why you feel broke? Now do you understand why you are bankrupt along with the rest of the country? Federal Reserve notes are unsigned checks written on a closed account. FRNs are an inflatable paper system designed to create debt through inflation, devaluation of currency. Whenever there is an increase of the supply of a money substitute in the economy without a corresponding increase in the gold and silver backing, inflation occurs. Inflation is an invisible form of taxation that irresponsible governments inflict on their citizens. The Federal Reserve Bank, who controls the supply and movement of FRNs, has everybody fooled. They have access to an unlimited supply of FRNs, paying only for the printing costs of what they need. FRNs are nothing more than promissory notes for U.S. Treasury securities, T-bills, a promise to pay the debt to the Federal Reserve Bank. There is a fundamental difference between paying and discharging a debt. To pay a debt, you must pay with value or substance. Example, gold, silver, barter, or a commodity. With FRNs, you can only discharge a debt. You cannot pay a debt with a debt currency system. You cannot service a debt with a currency that has no backing in value or substance. No contract in common law is valid unless it involves an exchange of good and valuable consideration. Unpayable debt transfers power and control to the sovereign power structure that has no interest in money, law, equity, or justice because they have so much wealth already. This lust is for power and control. Since the inception of central banking, they have controlled the fates of nations. The Federal Reserve System is based on the canon law and the principles of sovereignty protected in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. In fact, the international bankers use a canon law trust as their model, adding stock and naming it a joint stock trust. The U.S. Congress has passed a law making it illegal for any legal person to duplicate a joint stock trust in 1873. The Federal Reserve Act was legislated post facto to 1870, although post facto laws are strictly forbidden by the Constitution. 193. The Federal Reserve System is a sovereign power structure separate and distinct from the federal United States government. The Federal Reserve is a maritime lender and or maritime insurance underwriter to the federal United States, operating exclusively under Admiralty maritime law. The lender or underwriter bears the risk, and the maritime law compelling specific performance is paying the interest or premiums are the same. Assets of the debtor can also be hypothecated, to pledge something as a security without taking possession of it, as security by the lender or underwriter. The Federal Reserve Act stipulated that the interest on the debt was to be paid in gold. There was no stipulation in the Federal Reserve Act for ever paying the principal. Prior to 1913, most Americans owned clear allodial title to property, free and clear of any liens or mortgages until the Federal Reserve Act 1913 hypothecated all property within the federal United States to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, in which the trustees, stockholders, held legal title. The U.S. citizen tenant franchisee was registered as a beneficiary of the trust via his/her birth certificate. In 1933, the federal United States hypothecated all of the present and future properties, assets, and labor of their subjects, the 14th Amendment U.S. citizen, to the Federal Reserve System. In return, the Federal Reserve System agreed to extend the Federal United States Corporation all the credit money substitute it needed. Like any other debtor, the Federal United States government had no assigned collateral.
Had to assign. The federal government had to assign.
To
The Federal
United States government had to assign collateral.
Okay, the federal United States government had to assign collateral and security to their creditors as a condition of the loan. Since the federal United States didn't have any assets, they assigned the private property of their economic slaves, the U.S. citizen, as collateral against the unpayable federal debt. They also pledged the unincorporated federal territories, national park forests, birth certificates, and non-profit organizations as collateral against the federal debt. All has already been transferred as payment to the international bankers. Unwittingly, America has returned to its pre-American revolution. Feudal roots whereby all land is held by a sovereign and the common people had no rights to hold a loyal title to property. Once again, we the people are the tenants and sharecroppers renting our own property from a sovereign in the skies of the Federal Reserve Bank. We the people have exchanged one master for another. This has been going on for over 80 years without the informed knowledge of the American people, without a voice protesting loud enough. Now it's easy to grasp why America is fundamentally bankrupt. Why don't more people own their properties outright? Why are 90% of Americans mortgaged to the hilt and have little or no assets after all debts and liabilities have been paid? Why does it feel like you are working harder and harder and getting less and less? We are reaping what has been sown, and the results of our harvest is a painful bankruptcy and a foreclosure on American property, precious liberties, and a way of life. Few of our elected representatives in Washington, D.C. have dared to tell the truth. The federal United States is bankrupt. Our children will inherit this unpayable debt and the tyranny to enforce paying it. America has become completely bankrupt in world leadership, financial credit, and its reputation for courage, vision, and human rights. This is an undeclared economic war, bankruptcy, and economic slavery of the most corrupt order. Wake up, America. Take back your country. United States Congress records. Congressional records.
Now do you understand that paragraph, that first paragraph?
yes.
Now, that's real politics. That's what's been going on, and how many people that claim to be educated, claim to be super duper spiritual, don't even know what's in front of them, and don't even know that the United States is a corporation they think is a country, and they think that they're paying taxes to pave the streets and to send their children to school and to take care of the protection of the country, etc., and they're actually economic slaves. Slavery has been bureaucratized, and they're running around talking about they're spiritual and saved with all the problems that are resulting from what you see right here. They are accusing the devil of doing it. And it's their very politicians and priesthood right in their face. Now I want you to look, we have a little bit of time, take a little bit more time. I want you to go to the secret treaty of Verona, and I want you to read Article 3, which is the secret oath of the clergy. Now, and you'll see why I put this all together. Because if the people don't know this already, when you're talking to them about nationalization, why you nationalize, it's interesting, but it goes over their head because they think this stuff is just locked in a pocket with us. Like we're dispensing some consciousness that only we know. And every politician and leader guy knows this information. They know that the masses have been miseducated. And you're food and don't even know you're food. And then people get, oh, well, yeah, I'm in this, but I'm busy right now. And they don't know they're busy paying the toll that they think they ain't involved in. You see the problem? This congressional records reads this. This is, read the Secret Treaty of Verona. As a matter of fact, read from 1 to 3, and then we'll discuss a little bit and close out.
Okay. Secret Treaty of Verona, American Diplomatic Code, 1778 to 1884, Volume 2, Elliott, page 179.
So it also shows you this is public record. It's secret. It's only secret to uneducated people. But keep on reading.
The undersigned specially authorized to make some additions to the Treaty of the Holy Alliance, after having exchanged their respective credentials, have agreed as follows. Article 1. The high contracting powers, being convinced that the system of representative government is equally as incompatible with the monarchical principles as the maxim of the sovereignty of the people, with the divine right, engage mutually in the most solemn manner to use all that their efforts to put an end to the system of representative governments in whatever county it may exist in Europe, and to prevent it being introduced in those countries where it is not yet known.
Now you see why the politicians are going to say the republic. They keep saying democracy, and yet the Constitution guarantees. And yet you see why the politicians will now say the republic, and yet Article 4, Section 4 of the American Constitution guarantees a Republican form of government for every state in the Union, which means for them to even be a part of the Union, they must have a Republican form of government. But you will never hear them saying that. And yet the average person who claims to be educated and is spiritual be running around talking about our democracy and don't know it's anarchy in government. Now continue to read.
Article 2. As it cannot be doubted that the liberty of the press is the most powerful means used by the pretended supporters of the rights of nations to the detriment of those of princes, the high contracting parties promise reciprocally to adopt all proper measures to suppress it, not only in their own states, but also in the rest of Europe. Article 3.
In Article 3, Trinity, this is the secret oath of all the clergy. Now I'm going to qualify this, and then I want you to pay attention to what you're reading. So when they be doing the marriage certificates and people be thinking that they're talking about Jesus and everything, and that they're delivering them and submitting them to Jesus and all this sort of stuff, now I want you to read their own true secret oath of the clergy. Go ahead.
Okay. Article 3. Convinced that the principles of religion contribute most powerfully to keep nations in the state of passive obedience.
Read that first sentence again.
Convinced that the principles of religion contribute most powerfully to keep nations in the state of passive obedience, which they owe to their princes, the high contracting parties declare to be their intention to sustain in their respective states those measures which clergy may adopt with the aim of ameliorating their own interests, intimately connected with the preservation of the authority of the princes, and the contracting powers join in offering their thanks to the Pope for what he has already done for them, and solicit his constant cooperation in their views of submitted nations.
Now, the concept that the people have that
clergy is submitting them to Jesus. Now you see, they're really submitting them to the Pope. Who's them? It was the same Romans that murdered the Jesus that they say they love, and that's who they're really paying. And the preachers are what? Ameliorating their own interests. Now, if you said that to most people, without the record, they'd accuse you of having a devil.
She's Illuminati, and her earrings are almost pyramidal. She's got black and white on, and she got boots on too. It's the devil. She ain't saved.
And that's congressional records. It's only secret for people who can't read. And it's right in their faces. And guess who's paying them to keep the BS up? These very people who are busy on their job, but they're too busy for this, and they think this stuff ain't connected because they're spiritual. I suggest that pain will be a great teacher, and hopefully we can get through to limit the suffering that is totally unnecessary, because they are funding their own enslavement. Now, upon reading what you read, now do you understand why they're authenticating the birth certificates? But it's also all the other things. But at the same time, you also understand that it's all built on a fraud.
Yeah.
However, you have read the basis upon which that movement is made. Now you can analyze it, pardon me, and we will do that.
Yeah.
However, now you see, now you understand. Now what you can do, and what it is, well, that we do, excuse me, and what I was talking about before, is understanding it's a fraud. My position with this whole thing is to simplify and to remove the color from process. It's another reason why I was moved to expand on this and to put other information in there so that people can look at it more comprehensively rather than just that first paragraph and that first paragraph statement, and then the second paragraph where it says, as example. Those were the two that was given to me. The rest of it I put in order to give people an opportunity to have a more comprehensive comprehension of looking at it. And also that you can do just what you're doing now, rationalize and recognize while you can look at them doing that, it's still a fraud.
Yeah.
However, if you use the method, you're demonstrating that you know what's really going on. And it makes it difficult for them now to use the stock. So just like the wicked witches, not witch ain't wicked, but the wicked witches, stocks curled up under the house. You understand? House of Representatives. Do you understand? So again, if we can get people to understand that what the real politics, you're reading the real politics.
Yes.
It's what people suffer from every day, and they're busting their butt. You understand? They don't even know they don't even have the right if they're not in for a proper person. Then they pay people, think they're paying people, give them greenbacks to try to save my this and save my that, and they're what? Sucking you because they're vampires, because they know clearly you don't know what the swell's going on. And then somebody come and tell you about nationalizing and tell you about what's really, oh yeah, that's that more stuff. Yeah, that's interesting, but right now I need to see what the problem is. They're being thrown a life raft, and these seats are empty. And most of them think they're spiritual. So they ain't got time for this. And half of them, by the middle of next year, ain't gonna have
That's right.
stuff.
That's right. That's
Because they're getting ready to accelerate.
Yes.
Why? Because the nations of the earth are dumping them T-bombs.
That's right.
And because the U.S. corporation company have stolen Germany's gold, which is one of their main allies, they have turned their back on them.
Yeah.
So guess what's getting ready to hit these people that they don't know within the next couple of months? Hyperinflation.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Then see how much their idol God saves them. And see how spiritual they are. It's kind of hard to be spiritual when you're hungry. And you put that plastic card in and it don't work no more. Meanwhile, you put that plastic card in and then you got to watch your back because these people going to get wild on the street. Because they ain't going to have no JOBs. They're going to start shutting off water in different places strategically. They're going to start shutting electricity off. They're going to start crashing the internet to stop people from learning. And Social Security ordered over 40 million rounds of PowerPoint bullets to write checks with. Because everything they've been depending on from Rome is not going to be what they think. But their spiritual, I doubt it. But that's not with a criticism. Anyway, thank you all for coming out to the House of Reawakening Minds, hosted and maintained even under pressure and sacrifice by Dr. Naila Gilliam, who has been sincerely and with pressure maintaining the house. Oh, don't forget Thirsty Thursdays.
And you thirsty?
No, on Friday. But if you're thirsty, come Thursday and get a little bit of spiritual knowledge. And I like the way she has it set up because it, you know, as you can see, the priesthood know that the people are getting dogma. That's why they say what? Religion is actually used, but it really ain't religion, to keep the people in passive obedience, and they be thinking that they're spiritual. They have no idea that they've been played. Yep. But don't you think for 1 minute that all these big-time leader guys don't know that. They always knew that. That's why Skull and Bones set up the 501c3 agreement. That's to keep them in line. And then the people say, well, they ain't paying taxes because they're teaching the word. They have no idea what's going on. And there's no need to argue with them because they'll start thinking that you have a devil. So the best thing that you can do is keep it moving, trusting that you can save the next generation that they themselves are sacrificing. Islam. Well, that's a good one. That's a good one. But anyway, so I'm gonna make sure that you have, the proper one on your flash. You got your computer here?
No, I didn't break it down.
Oh, all right. You don't have your computer? You got your computer?
I got my flash drive now.
Yeah, everybody got a flash.
I got a flash drive, but no computer.
I got it on the flash drive, but we'll update it. But I'm going to put that. I'm going to take the motu proprio that we did, a year and a half ago when we did the thing, Skype to Canada, and I'm going to include that in it and give it a little bit more structure, and then talk maybe a little more commentary on, the authentication of the birth certificate, why, but also with the critique.
Right.
With the critique, but the major thing is that people don't just dismiss that out of hand, not, with a criticism, not understanding why people do it. I don't condemn them. Right. I would qualify as a clean-up methodology.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Because my position is, can we allow it to be that this child here doesn't dance to that hoop and therefore the child has no right? On an instrument that was made by the Jesuit order that claimed his body and that it can't be recognized unless he jumped through the hoop, get a birth certificate and authenticate it, and then go to Trenton. If they're in Jersey, go to Wilmington, go to wherever they are.
Dover.
Where's the?
Dover.
Dover, yeah, Dover, in this territory. And actually, in this territory is actually where the chattel stock property is actually registered.
Yeah, corporate
The
council.
14th Amendment corporate persons are registered in this territory, Delaware. Mm-hmm.
Estate.
Yeah, the first state, broken estate. You see the point?
Corporate capital world.
Yeah. And the deal with this, yeah, here, and so because of convenience, what they do, they do the registration here, and on the West Coast, they do it in Nevada. And that's because of inconvenience. But as you will see, if you did a little research, you'll find that corporations from across the country and in Canada are backed up in courts in bankruptcy. Right here, the bankruptcy courts are backed up for years. They won't even be able to move fast enough. Now, so as you begin, so like while the people are in denial, you're going to be passing malls with 2 stores open in the entire mall. And if the people ain't woke up then it'll be 1 store. And if they ain't woke up then, they better start learning which grasses are edible out there. No, serious, And hopefully, they have no idea how close they are to that right now.
Yes, indeed.
That's not just a scenario that I'm saying.
So close.
And these
So-
boards on our indication.
Yes.
These boards, they keep calling people.
So,
terrorists.
and there was a cover up. And Ebola is because they've been threatened. And so what that is a diversion because it's getting ready to crash big time.
Big time.
And so all of the so-called 401ks people think they got is called
Okay.
OO,
Okay.
almost one.
Okay.
I'm serious. I'm not really trying to be funny. And these people have no idea that they're at the edge. And it's sort of like people, even though they feel it in their heart, but they're in denial. But the deal is they're not going to have to wait too much longer. In truth, it has already crashed. What they've been calling quantitative easing is where they've been creating counterfeit bonds to cover counterfeit bonds that they've sold to other nation states who are now dumping them because their countries are collapsing by virtue of having them UST bonds that you read in here that are worthless. Now, so what's happening is this. They've created a new forum for the rest of the civilized world where they're not going to transact business with Federal Reserve notes, which means they're going to start pouring in, which they're doing right now, which is why all the new pipelines that are being built across Asia, which is another reason why they're starting the war, trying to stop them, have been funded with UST bonds that they're using to fund all of new structure around the world because they know they can't be redeemed. And so what's happening is the Federal Reserve is having to print not billions, trillions of new notes to cover the derivatives that they've created falsely, and it's being concentrated domestically because it's not being accepted outside. Now, so the deal of it is, you don't have long that they can continue to cover this up, which means all things imported will jump 200%. 200%. Go ahead, good brother.
What happens to, the Federal Reserve is beyond all this. What happens to them?
What happens to them? They have been the real government. They are the shadow government. They've been protected because they are the cabal. The United States government has been dissolved. How many people, meaning that it's not unknown, but people keep acting like that. What we've been telling them is just our opinion. The chickens have come home to roost, as Malcolm used to say.
Yes, sir.
And right now, it's at the point where those who have been the naysayers and the deniers are going to be hit, and they're going to be the least prepared to handle what they're going to be hit, because they believed in Rome. They're invested in Rome, and they have been robbed by the very Romans that murdered all the prophets, that they've been lying and saying that Jesus was a part of this stuff. And it's Constantine. They've been saying they've been worshiping Jesus, they've been worshiping Constantine. That's why the priesthood will never tell them that the official name of what they call Christianity is the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed. And they've been funding their own enslavement, and now it's getting ready. In other words, now the checks are due. Now we're not talking scenario, we're talking real world politics. And those who are not aware do not know how to respond. You're giving that paper reversioner to support your legal position, if you're willing to take it, to preserve what estate you have left, if you got one, to survive this time that you're going to need, so that when the brakes come off, in other words, industry is getting ready to come to a screeching halt. And everything that people think they are secure in, they're going to quickly find that not only are they not, they're going to recognize how ruthlessly they're going to be treated by these people that they have trusted. And all their prayers and all of their quote-unquote spirituality is not going to save them. And when they look for mercy, they might get a bullet. So it's going to get quite ugly. And if anybody is not in harmony with nature, does not know how to extract water, do not know what's food that's growing near the curb, you're going to have starvation, and you're going to have disease, and they're dropping that patented virus called Ebola, and the patented virus called AIDS, and the patented virus called MERS, all which were war viruses. They're not occurring in nature. And so all these quote-unquote believers in the systems are going to have to be forced to prove that their God works. And they're not going to have the option of discussing it. When they watch their babies' bellies swell, when they watch spots come on them, when they start recognizing that Ebola is not just liquid transfer, it's airborne also. So the immune system is going to have to be at its peak. You're not going to have the resources, even where they have hospitals, even right now in different places where they've dropped the virus deliberately. They won't let 10 people in at a time or a day. They intend to create what you would call genocide. And it's not accidental. And it's not on its way, it's already here. Now also, they're going to use it as an excuse to restrict people's travel. Then when people go to travel, they're going to screen them, and when they screen them, they're going to be contaminating every other one. The same way they did with the so-called AIDS, how do you say, AIDS test, is AIDS distribution. Do you understand? Anyway, again, thank you for coming out to the House of Reawakening Minds. Trust me, done some good. What you have in your hand is giving you a general outline of the real politics. If you read between the lines, we're going to go maybe a little deeper in it maybe next time and start talking about how to use these things. We've been redundantly telling people to nationalize, but you must understand, if you're not your proper person, lawfully, you don't have any claim whatsoever. And I know that a lot of our people really don't understand that. So we're not here to criticize them for not understanding that. We must dig the deepest that we have to find an intelligent way to transfer the information to them so that they can recognize that this stuff is already known. It's just that we've been locked out of it. And whereas they keep thinking that this is just with conscious Moors, every politician already knew this stuff. They've been part of your enslavement. And it's sort of like, including the big reverend guys. This is why no one in Masonry speaks, because if they told the truth, not only would you rebel against them, you would have been freed. So when you hear the term, know ye the truth and the truth will set you free, well, now you've been told the truth. You have an opportunity to do with it what you will. But what we're going to do is try to make sure that you've got it in such a way that it's useful, not just, oh, this is interesting, you know, that's why I expanded on it. And as we talk about it, I see the necessity of expanding a little bit more. So I'm going to take the motu proprio that we did, because I did, you know, we put the Tropicon speech in there when I did it on the fly, when we did the motu proprio book a year and a half ago. I'm going to just take that book, put this in there, expand on it, go deeper in more definitions that are related to it, and then discuss a little bit about the authentication of the birth certificate. And I suggest that the authentication is sort of like, I don't think that's appropriate. How are you going to authenticate? You know, it's like, you know, but I understand, but I think it needs to be, I think it needs to be addressed in another angle. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And my position is that when a natural person or heir of the estate declared a nationality and proclaimed it for the public record, all these things should be assumed and be done. And I'm going to look for a way of addressing it, that would be the issue. Because there's no way that these millions and millions of people can possibly go through that process and have to go to the so-called headquarters of the different corporate states and go through the process of filing and registering, to authenticate, and then they will consider not using the Sister Q trust against you. I suggest that that's too complex, though I understand why it's done. And as you can see, because the birth certificate, you have been hypothecated by virtue of your birth certificate, but you must also know it is also the marriage certificate and registrations and all the other instruments that you don't suspect. That's just giving you an example. So just because he's saying birth certificate, don't think it's just that. It's also the marriage certificate. It's also the original titles of manufacturer's titles of origin that's on your vehicles. And they give you a certificate of title, which is not the title. That's also on the stock market. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So the people are going to have to get educated, and logically, if they're locked up in their belief systems, they're locked out. And so we can't sit around and lament about what is obvious, you know. But as you read this, you can. The major thing that's being presented to you right now, although this can be expanded on, being redundant at the same time cutting through the chase. Don't you underestimate that people around you didn't know this. Just because it's not being discussed, you're reading it for yourself, and it's not just some newspaper article, it's the congressional record. That means all your politicians had this, and they had it all the time. And everybody that's living today, do you understand, been living under this Roman rule and didn't even know it. And while they think they've been saved and all this sort of stuff and going about their everyday lives, busting in their butt thinking that they were buying a house, they didn't even own the house. You can't even own nothing if you don't have a allodial title. And the people you say them allodial title, they don't even know what you're talking about.
No.
Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
I actually did some
Oh, you do him first, then yourself. Go ahead, good brother. Real
What's the
quick.
name of that book? You said you're right, and I would like to get it.
No, motu proprio, I'll see that you get it.
Right.
It was actually a compilation of different issues, just like the Tropicon speech. I also had in it the motu proprio apostolic letter from Pope Francis. You know, and what I did, I collaged them because we were doing a Skype to Canada. And Grand Sheikah's Nika
Bey, upon notes that I was making, was constructing it while we were doing the Skype. On the printing, she's very, very good. She was constructing it under my instruction while I was doing the lecture to Canada. And that comprised the motu proprio. And there was only limited amounts of them printed up, but they were very effective. There's limited commentary in it. So it's presented with, on the predication that the people there, most of them were already scholars or conscious. But for a person who's not conscious politically and don't have law books, you know, you talk about reversioner, you talk about de facto, fundamental basic stuff, but they don't know what that is, but that affects their everyday life. And logically, when you're talking just this normality of what's really going on for the most people who haven't been educated, and they got a million questions, and half of them are too ashamed to ask the questions because they don't want to admit their own ignorance. And others will say that they understand what you're saying when they don't know what you're saying. But then on the other hand, not knowing that this affects every phase of their life, and they're looking at it from a third perspective. Oh, you know, those Moors said this, and I know some Moors, and they national, and I know some Moors, and they don't have no idea they're in the middle of the soup. Do you understand? They're totally disconnected. However, they're the easiest food, and they will be the first who will be discarded. Now, because we know that, we're doing the best we can to save them, even though many of them will condemn us for doing what we're doing, because we're not saved. Do you understand?
Yeah, I was going to say that was prophecy in of itself. If you look at all the stories in the Bible, time after time, it is the masses of people who get washed away in the flood.
It's exactly.
Jesus had 12 disciples. 2 of them betrayed him. 1 with a kiss. Another one denied him. So it's a prophecy.
And what people need to know is them right now. See, how many people look at the word prophecy and don't recognize that it is a projection to the future, not at the time that is written. Therefore, the generations that come and live it often, unless they really understand those books, don't even see themselves, so they're unprepared. Because they're looking back when they should be looking in. And usually, because of that, they miss the mark. And by missing the mark, they're sacrificed. And this is the satisfaction that Rome gets. This is why Rome has said, under the guise of the enlightened one. So they hide behind Saturn. They hide behind Satan, who's really doesn't have any power. It's an illusion. And they do the dirt, and they blame the devil that they made up. And then pretend that they are actually working for God and the prophets. And they're the ones been sticking you. And they've been ameliorating their own interest. Walking around in golden robes and 3,000 note suits. At the expense of the widow's pennies. And the devil gets blamed. And the widow gets thrown on the street. But she goes to the circle, to the church, and funds her own enslavement, while saying, Lord, 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 but their hearts are far removed. And they don't even see themselves. And it's kind of difficult because they're blinded by their quote-unquote beliefs.
Straight at the gods of Europe whom they knew nothing.
Yes. It's shameful. And what I just said to you is really not parabolic. It is directly the truth. Our job is, how can we get this information to our people to save them the best that we can? Because they don't know that they are going to be sacrificed. Like for real, for real, for real. Not just allegorically. They're really going to be sacrificed. They don't think that blood's going to be in the street. It is. And we can't stop it either. The deal, what we can do is kind of limited. That's what our opportunity is. However, that which
is done must be done. Meaning that the debt must be paid, but the debt is not like the people think it is. The debt is a debt of dishonor. And for not honoring our mothers and fathers, there will be many that will have to be sacrificed. But it is by their own will that it is done. That's the deal. So therefore, when it says Gabriel's horn must be blown, that means Gabriel's horn is blown. And they can't say they weren't told. That's the point. They can say that they weren't told, but they will be lying. Therefore, the truth is out. And therefore, the new era of time has come. Aquarian age is here. And you have lightning fast communication. Massive communication. And they will say they didn't know, but they will be lying. They will say they didn't hear, they will be lying. They will say nobody made an effort to tell them, they will be lying. They say, well, nobody teach us that. It's in the congressional records. And certainly, if they can tell you about a God in the netherworld who they do not see, and then can tell you about what's before their face, they themselves are charged. And when they say, the devil made me do it, the reflection of the dark priesthood who's been hiding behind the devil can say this: I just called, you followed. It's that simple. Peace, you all. Hope this is good.
Islam.